Welcome to another episode of By the Numbers, a special episode because the same thing happens after every major. We enter a phase in the scene lovingly called Rostermania, where everyone loses their shit and signs completely new squads in their entirety based on their failures to win the major. So as always, I'm your host, Richard Lewis. I'm going to be taking you through it. Who better than my co-host, the esports historian, Duncan Thorin Shields, and Sammy D, not Sammy J. You had a choice, Duncan. Yeah, because remember, he thought your surname was Jones, I think.
No,
you
know,
You got wrong.
I
just thought his game ralias. In my brain, I'd just mistaken it. I thought his game ralias was
Sammy J.
Sammy J. That's what I'm going to start calling you now. You've just got to lead into it. You have the choice. You have Davis or Jones, basically, if you're Welsh. Everybody knows that's true.
Being Law, that famous third.
Yeah, famous Welsh surname. I mean,
it's not even a name either. It's well, that's so ridiculous.
No,
that was just a brain thought. That was a boomer moment, guys.
You know, I turned to them. There they were, Bainlaw, and Bainlaw, all just mining away with their pickaxes. All the Bainlaws were there. 3 generations
the
of
druids
Bainlaws.
of the Welsh.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah, we're going to talk about Rostermania today. Just before we get into it, obviously, quick shout out to the sponsors that make the show possible. I mean, you know, they contribute. They're not. It's not all them. We do some work as well.
Agree.
Yeah, yes.
It's like when people go, I do it all for the fans. I mainly do it because they pay me. Fuck the fans.
Yeah,
like if they turn up indirectly, then great.
Yeah, so, you know, listen, we are grateful and everything, but like, don't take all of the shine. But shout out to these guys, NordVPN. You can go to nordvpn.com/RLS, get 74% off. And of course, SteelSeries. I'm rocking the SteelSeries headsets. It's great gear. You can go to the SteelSeries store. You can type !SteelSeries just in the chat. It'll take you direct there. You type in my name with no space, Richard Lewis, and you get 10% off anything in the store. So let's start we're just going to jump right in because there were a few stories we didn't even really get time to sort of dig into before the major. And the big one was, of course, Fnatic. Fnatic did eventually sign Smooya to their roster to replace Jaquinho that hadn't been doing particularly well, and making it now a UK core. This was a move that we talked about. I certainly did. I was pushing it. I think Smooya had done his time in purgatory, deserved a chance. And it was still weird. There was a bit of fuckery. They used him as a stand-in for a tournament in the groups, and then they got out of groups, and he played really well. And then they used another player in his place for the playoffs. That was supposedly the agreement the whole time. Spoiler, it wasn't. There was some weird last-minute, you know, maybe some doubts about him being a good culture fit or some shit. But anyway, he won over the team. They brought him in full time. And now if you go and look at Fnatic, they are on a tear. They simply haven't looked back since he's come into the team. They finally made it back into the top 20 in the world after being as low as 54 at one point. And they haven't dropped a map in like their last, I think, 8 series. They've won 10 best of 3s. And yes, the opposition isn't always great, but in that time they've beaten up Complexity, they've beaten up Ents, they've beaten Spirit, they 3-0'd big when they won the DreamHack Open. So good results. So Duncan, obviously this is a good move, right? This is the future of Fnatic, and the future is British.
It is, but the only thing is, this is either an amazing honeymoon period and it's going to become a top team, or it's a flash in the pan. Because the thing about this lineup is, when they added Smooya, like, he isn't the entire X Factors whether they win or lose. Like, they've got amazing players. Like Brolan, obviously, was one of the best players in the world a couple of years ago. I think even technically last year he was probably in the top 20. And obviously, Crims is probably one of the most sturdy veterans in all of Counterstrike history. Never really a bad player. But if you look at their team, like Alex and Mezzi, I already they're a known quantity. I already knew they'd be good. I expected Smooya to frag out, but it's actually getting the Swedes on board now that's really turned this Fnatic team around. When they first brought Smooya in, it was just like Smooya had to carry. And if you notice, there was all that drama about where people were like implying like maybe Mezzi's being given more resources than Brolan, and Brolan isn't like a star player. So I think initially I had my questions about like basically would the Swedish side of it work, because of the reason Swedes have basically always done Swedish only teams, even when we're talking about like just taking a bloody like Norwegian and who can speak Swedish. We're not even talking about you have to go to English. They just do stick to their like cultural aspect typically. So
Yeah.
I actually think at the moment, if it can last, this team has mad potential. Like everyone's fragging out of their mind basically. Like every single player you would want is doing their job, or more even. Like you go and look, people like Brawler and Ard fragging out again. Smoothie obviously is mega at the moment. So I don't know. I'm a part of me is worried that this might already be the upper end of what's possible. So I want to see when they get in the real competitions and play the big boys. But yeah, if you were going to smash tier 2 like they have basically at the moment, you'd want it to be where the performance is so above the level of what they're at that you actually believe it'll carry over into tier 1. And I do think, by the way, the mix of players is good.
Oh yeah, and listen, I'll just add, I saw hilariously after they'd lost a game, I can't remember which one it was. It might have been the loss to Scar Day. I'm not too sure, but anyway, there was a thread on Reddit, right? And in it were Fnatic Flare fans, and they were absolutely convinced that Alex, and this was like only 10 series into his tenure or something. They were utterly convinced Alex was a failure as an IGL and he had to be removed. And that was the prevailing sentiment. And they were like, Smoothie's not going to turn this team around. Jaquinio, it's not even his fault. It was like, it was the level of delusion. I've never really got that vibe like you do in League of Legends with Fnatic fans, that they're just fucking delusional morons. But this was unreal. I mean, like, the idea you're not going to give an IGL like time to bed in. He didn't even, keep in mind, he inherited the squad, which is never ideal as an IGL. But I think in particular, what really has been bore out is Alex, when he came in, he said, we've got to get Mezzy, and Mezzy's been a fucking revelation. I mean, the legacy of the Colossus with Henry, obviously, is the discovery of Mezzy and the proof that he is a legitimate tier 1 player. More than anyone on this team, more than Brawler, more than Crims, the reason they're winning games is Mezzy is popping off on, every time they're on the server. And I don't think he was never a fragger in his previous role before he got to Cloud9, and now he's just gone thermonuclear, easily one of the best findings. If we weren't spoilt for rookies this year, we'd probably be spending more time talking about Mezzy. So I agree. I think Fnatic, I think the future's bright, brother. I think they're going to be having a good time, and they've got Gambit and IEM Fall. They're going to win that game. So I'm gonna.
I don't get this whole thing of why people think Alex sucks. Like, it's one thing if you just think he's like, maybe you just don't think he's the best, or maybe you think like I'm overrating him. That's one thing, right? Like basically, it's the same discussion people have with MSL. When they say the guy sucks, though, it's just like, what are we basing this off? Like, listen, even take Vitality out of the equation for a moment, because you might just think like a lot of fans like, yeah, it's just all Zero doing that. Like, well, you've already seen what it's like since he left, by the way, right? All I'll say is this: if I pick any in-game leader you want, so if you're a big fan of Glaive, Carrigan, who else would even be on the list in the modern day? Because I guess like Sean Gayers and all those people fucked off, haven't they? Let's say, all right, for the third one, I'll take like Apex or something, right? So let's take whoever they think the best IGLs are. If I give those IGLs Zeppa, Floppy, Essetag, and you can take whoever you want as the fifth player, how are they going to do? How's that team going to do? It's going to do fuck all is what it's going to do. Like, that's what I don't get. The one thing to me, I agree on the Messi angle as well. I also thought he actually played up to par. Aside from individually Messi, the number one thing I took away from Cloud9 was Alex is clearly a fucking good IGL. Look what he's doing with these players, dude. Like, he's taken these players head to head with like Navi, Gambit, Vitality, FaZe. Like, it's his mental, mate. Like, I know he didn't win the games, but like, who the fuck could? That's one of those moments, boys, where you just turn to your hater and go, I am just an in-game leader, not a miracle worker. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like I just said there, take your favourite. If it's Carrigan or Glaive, if I give them Zeppa Floppy. By the way, you are aware, guys, that Glaive took 3 other multiple major winners and MVPs of tournaments and top 20 players in the world in the past and couldn't get to the top 8 of a major. Like, you are aware of that, right? Like, that's the greatest. That's the GOAT. And I would even say he's the GOAT. So, like, I think people's expectations for leaders are mad unreasonable, because it's like, it'll be like judging football managers without even looking at what team they're on and be like, right, you're on fucking Fulham and you're not winning the Premier League. Like, he obviously should be. What are you talking about? He's on Fulham. Like, if he comes fourth on Fulham, he's probably a fucking G and E. You know what I mean?
Listen, I've always said this. I think Alex is almost like a throwback to like an MSL type IGL, in that he's a really good systems IGL and he always gets the most out of the squad he's got. Like, he can always give players a 10% boost just by giving them good fundamentals, like sort of like what Carrigan does when he's motivated. And when you think of classic Carrigan lineups, or think about what Carrigan's mouse sports did, there's shades of this in this Fnatic. There are a bunch of novices, but they're fragging out and they're playing. And listen, the way they're winning these games, I've watched Fnatic. Obviously, I know Alex. No, me and Smoothie are patching up. I'm watching Fnatic's games the last, since I got back from the major. Mate, they're playing really good tactical stuff. They've got like really good reads. They're competitive on a bunch of maps. And when I think back to Cloud9 and how close that came to being, a great team with arguably an inferior roster. Yeah, you've got to give Alex his due now. And any Fnatic fans that think he's like somehow not a good IGL based on recent performances, they're just out to fucking lunch. It's absolutely crazy.
Oh, it's mental, isn't it?
Also, speaking of mental, ZeroZero Nation. You may have heard of them.
Won a game, have they finally? What's going on now?
No, don't be silly.
Don't be silly, okay.
Don't be silly. Obviously, they've changed the roster and removed the twins. Henny and Lucas are out, and Fur has come in, meaning that TRK can sort of play on a permanent basis now, completing their 5. And obviously, they've been playing pretty poorly, I would say, of late. They haven't been competing in any sort of mainstream tournaments, not since the last RMR, where they literally lost every game. They were 0-5 nation, as the fans were saying. But they've been having a tough time. They've barely got any wins. They played in this Pinnacle thing that was happening recently, and they're losing to teams like Indie, IRA, Finest, Unique. And when you look at the roster, keep in mind they've still got KNG, they've still got Fur, they've got VSM. He looked great at the North American RMR. I just despair for Brazilian Counterstrike right now, mate. I just despair. This cannot be the fan favorite representation for what was one of the strongest regions in the world.
Here's how rough it is. Like, first of all, as you say, just having, by the way, players like KNG, previously had Henny, just those players alone should make your team at least competitive. What's mental is I'm looking down this list of teams they've lost to, Richard, and this is how bad the list is. If they'd won all these games, I would have to say, but it means effectively fuck all, because these aren't even good teams. So they've lost them all. Like, when people talk about the honeymoon period, when you make a lineup, and it does bizarrely in almost all cases tend to give you a bit of a spark, and even if it doesn't work out, it's like a honeymoon for those few weeks. It's awesome, isn't it? Or that short period. They've got like the opposite of that. They've just gone straight to like a terrible divorce where they're just using the kids against each other and stuff. Fucking, like trying to actually like fuck each other's lives over and hold everything over them and just destroy each other financially. Like, you've skipped the part with even winning any games, because if people don't know as well, by the way, what's hilarious is this should just be called like fucking Karma Team or something, because these people brought it all on themselves. Like, if this was a scenario like the old Polish players and the old Taz, where they just couldn't sort of find room at the inn, and they were a mega team, but they had to keep going from org to org to org, and we can put aside some of the stupid times when they could have joined orgs, but generally they were hard done by, right? I'd feel mad sorry for them, because I do want to see people like KNG play Counter-Strike still, but they did this all to themselves. Like, I'm not going to go on about the MIBR angle again, but I will just say, like, these guys Henny essentially crippled Furia. His brother, for some reason, just has to. This is what I don't get about these two brothers, right? I do get the idea of wanting to play with your brother. It sounds like a wicked idea if it works. What I don't get is this. It's like being friends with someone in the industry, Rich. If I'm friends with someone, right, and I would like to be on their project, but I know it'd be better without me, I would just go and do it without me, mate. What I don't get is that. It's why when one of these two brothers is much worse than the other, do they have to fucking bring the other one down? Like, it's your brother, dude. Don't you want to see him succeed? Like, I know I've been told behind the scenes their whole shtick basically is sort of like, who gives a fuck, we made it already, we got the cars, we got the women, we got the fucking lights out, we got a sick income, etc. But there has to be more than that. Like, surely even they found after this many years. Like, I even heard, by the way, like that whole thing with how FNX is going to come back for the last dance, which I'm sure we'll talk about this episode. I think even that is what the twins are going to have to realize eventually, which is even FNX, who by all accounts has been in dem clubs popping the fucking bottles with literally like 10 out of 10 models from Brazil, even he's sort of realised, almost got to be more to life than this, hasn't there? Like, maybe I should actually have other goals and things I should have come. So, mate, they've got to surely figure this out eventually, because the thing is, the core of players they had is way too good to be this bad. And you could still, despite everything, you could still make a proper team out of it. I will say I don't really understand the angle of like is KNG just supposed to be the IGL for all versions of this? There's still some flaws in the team, but I do think some of those players are mega. This team is a joke, though. It goes up.
Yeah, I mean, so to put it in context, HLTV has them ranked at 132. in the world, which is insane when you look at the roster. But just to your point as well about Henny and Lucas, here's what I know, because obviously I talk to people don't believe this, but I talk to a lot of the Brazilian players. And listen, it's all Henny, mate. It's not Lucas. Lucas he's like saying like, oh, Henny wants to play with Lucas more than Lucas wants to play with Henny. And that's why it's always Henny. That's the one fucking up these teams like he did. But remember, the whole Brazilian like scene is completely fucking different if Henny and Lucas and their desire to play together doesn't completely cripple that Immortals lineup just at a point when they were the 5th best team in the world and were really looking like they could commit an upset. But Henny had another option as well, another top 5 team in the world, Furia, when he was playing for them. He fucked that up. And now, by the way, he never really delivered on this team. He never really delivered on this lineup. And the insistence on playing with Lucas. Lucas is a fraction of the player Henny is. I don't understand how he even gets opportunities in Tier 1, besides maybe the prospect of Henny turning up to play for you if you sign Lucas. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, what I will say is, like, Fur as well. You want to talk about players who are just checked all the way out. Fur is a fucking joke. He's a joke, mate. I'll tell you.
Let me give you a quick sidebar on this one, because it's exactly the topic I'm going to talk about. Do you remember, because this will be an obscure story, but you might remember the tweet. There was a tournament, I believe it was actually the Star Series in China, that was right after the Katowice major in 2019. So this is over 2 years ago, like 2.5 years ago, basically, when they had the Star Series right afterwards that Navi won over like fucking, I think it was Fnatic they played in the final, something weird, one with Exist, right? During that tournament, Fur made a tweet that basically was saying, like, I'm retiring or something. Just some tweet outright like that. And the reason it was like an incident is because I famously replied and gave like a very wholesome message and was like, oh, you know, you'll be remembered for your great career, blah, blah, blah. You did great. And then basically him and the other Brazilians were sort of like, lol, I was just trolling. Couldn't you even tell I was trolling? And I remember just thinking like, well, where's the joke? Like, like what? You are aware that it's a really bad sign, mate, that when you're a legendary player and you go, I'll probably just retire, that people don't go, no, please stay. People like me go, well, you had a fantastic career and best of luck to you, whatever you do. That's not a good sign, mate. Like, in that scenario, A, I don't know what the joke is, but B, the real joke is your career at that point in time. Because I think Fur's another example. Like, you know what? It's a sad thing, Richard, but one of the worst things about Flashpoint 1 is because MIBR almost won that tournament. Yeah. And it was basically them against a bunch of tier 2 players and barely anyone with experience. Dude, they just did it off experience. Like Fallen and Fur basically just did the kind of shit they've always done. Fur just does all those mad aggro pushes on timings. Fallen just like takes like mad 1v2s that he wins it with an AWP. And all they did is just bully these guys with experience. They weren't actually better than them. They just used their experience. So it made those guys really think like, we still got it. Like, you never had it. It was years fucking ago. So no, I think the addition of Fur to that team as well, it's just like, this just fucking beggars belief. Like, is this all Brazil is now? I know there's this mad scenario where you can't buy anyone because of the buyouts, but this is the fucking old boys club, mate. The way that these the former SK players run the scene is the old boys club.
Reference came on point. Yeah, look, I mean, listen, here's why I think it's a joke. I want people to go back and look at Fur, how he was playing when he was a stand-in for Imperial against top-tier opposition. And what you have to remember is, this isn't we hate Fur club or whatever. No, this guy was the 3rd best player in the world in 2017. This guy was the 15th best player in the world the year before that. This is a 2-time major winner. The standards by which you exist are different for you, right? I know this player can be, I still think even at 30, he can give a lot more than he's been given. But go back and look at those games when he was a stand-in for Imperial against the likes of like Triumph, Heroic, Team Spirit. He was outclassed. He looked like he didn't belong in that company anymore. And then since he's joined ZeroZero Nation, he has been one of the worst players on this team. They played it was the Danish team, Lyngby Vikings, right? They played them. It was 3 maps, right? All super close, like 16-14s. And basically, I think he got just over 30 frags in 3 maps. He is so washed, it is ridiculous. And so, I don't know, like I say, I think, unfortunately, you're right. I think there's an aspect where what ZeroZero Nation is doing is actually hurting the Brazilian scene. There is so much incredible talent in Brazil right now, but it's just spread out. You've got guys like Safe. He's got to get an opportunity on a tier 1 team soon. And instead, you're recycling guys who literally go on stream and say they don't give a fuck. They don't care. They just want the money now. That is their standard. That's what they're playing for. And like I said, I'm sad for the Brazilian scene right now. I was hoping one of those teams, I thought it might be God-sent maybe, might pop off at that major, and it didn't happen. And yet these guys remain like the fan favourites. It's fucking tragic what's happened to Brazilian CS, mate.
It's also why, unfortunately, I actually get the vibe that in Brazilian CS, it will be like when the Luminosity team first came up. You're only allowed, for some reason, to have one team of cool people who actually like try to be tier one. So it was obviously the original team with Furin, and then it was Furia more recently. But the reason why is you get the one group of guys who, until it gets to their head, are trying properly. And everyone else actually buys into this culture we're talking about. Like, I bet the reason fans aren't mad at Fur, etc., is they do think what you're implying he says, Richard, which is sort of like, who gives a fuck? Got the bag, didn't I? Just screwing around. I've already got my majors. Like, it's a bit like, in general, I know this is like a bit of a rant, but it's kind of what's happening to esports in general. Like, you remember that story? I think it was last year, the one where basically Shroud and all the Ninja and all that came back from Mixer, right?
Yeah.
And everyone was like, lol, they got to keep the money. I just like, again, you are aware they were the biggest streamers in the world, right? I don't even get that story still. So which was good? Was it good that they got a load of money and it meant that an esports business failed? That seems terrible. Was it good that they took a massive amount of money to stream to way less people? Isn't that just less satisfying for them in their career? You know what I mean? Like, I don't get when the upset. Money can't be the be all and end all, guys. So if you are the players in these particular case in the Brazilian scene, if you're fans as well, like, you got to have more to fucking aspire to, boys, than just getting money. Like, that's not cool. By the way, if that was all you needed, then we wouldn't criticize the NA scene, would they? They've had money for fucking decades now. Like, they've always had money in NA. Like, but the point is, until NA actually stepped up to the plate and had world-class teams like Team Liquid a couple of years ago, yeah, you're supposed to say to them, there's more than money, mate. In fact, you should live up to the level of that money. Like, some of you players are mad overpaid. In fact, I think that whole scenario that happened with all the buyouts, here's the bad part. No one ever gets fucking bought out. It doesn't work. All it does is trap the good players on bad teams, and what it actually does is basically some sort of fucked up CSGO version of what they have in League of Legends, Richard, where, you know when they made this thing, it's a very quick tangent. When they made this import rule in the LCS where you can only have 2 imports, they made this fucked up clause, which may as well have been called the Bjergsen clause, which allowed people like Bjergsen to bizarrely not be counted as imports and just play on your team. So you can have 2 imports as well, right? And it was only a few people it initially applied to, and then it got harder and harder to get people through the loophole, as it were, right? Basically, all that did was create a type of person, and the best example ever of this is the player Hooney, if you know him, who just because he's just got that status now. Well, the problem is it doesn't matter that he's nowhere near as good as he used to be. Because he's now treated as an NA player, he actually has a massively boosted value, because compared to a normal NA player who has no experience, he's mega. So what it means is Hooney doesn't actually have to compete against anyone except this one small group of people. It's like they've done the same thing in Brazilian CSGO. Because the buyouts are so ridiculous for everyone else, of course you're just going to recycle Taco and Fur and Fallen, and you're going to say, oh, fucking... In fact, they're all out there still. Oh, Steel still out there. You're going to get all of them. All those guys are doing at the moment is living in some weird, like, liminal zone where they're not in the buyout prison. They're not in good teams, but they're just trying to get whatever they can in between. And I agree. You think of some of the other names, these names should be way ahead of these motherfuckers. Like, the idea you'd want the Fur guy over trying out that Safe guy. Like, what are you talking about? That guy was even money at the major. But I get why it is. If you can't fucking buy him for love or money, then there's nothing you can do, is there?
Yeah, but I mean, they're always talking about how there's all this money flying around, and, these orgs, I mean, they're all like, oh, yeah, we've got this unbelievable wealthy backer who's like a poker legend, or Neymar's buying, it's all this mad shit, or like an official football club is funding it. Where's the money at then, guys? Why are you recycling these bums? Like, that's why I've got a renewed respect for Taco. His Twitter game is still fucking cheeks. But at the end of the day, I've got respect for him. He's out there trying to raise up that new generation. And if you look at some of the boys on Godsend, I'm thinking particularly Dumau and Barton, they actually do have prospects. Which, by the way, while we're on that topic, before we segue into it, I do want to point out that the academy side for ZeroZero Nation is literally called ZeroZero Prospect.
I mean, the jokes write themselves. I know.
These fucking coked out dickheads coming up with this. Like, who the fuck are these guys? Like,
I mean, I would say, how am I supposed to tell the two teams apart? That's all. Obviously, I would say that.
the madness.
I know.
It's a madness. But anyway, while we're still on Brazil,
A quick sidebar. I thought
let's a sidebar.
Don't you also get sick and tired of that take that esports fans have to this day, Richard? Where what they do is the obvious analogy I'll give is Europe is like the EPL, right? They act as though every time even vaguely connected rich person, so like Steph Curry bought in a TSM, they don't know that Steph Curry didn't. He was probably in a hedge fund that just said, like, you want to invest investment, I'll put some in this esports spot. But they act like, oh no, he loves League of Legends and bought TSM, right? They usually don't say bought it, he bought TSM, right? The obvious implication they always go straight to goes, he's probably just going to buy Faker for $10 million. Like, when's that ever happened in esports ever? I'm literally the only vaguely close example is Rick Fox. And even he, are you ready? He bought Froggen and Hooney. He didn't buy Faker himself, mate. Like, nobody is going to do that. But they act like it's like Abramovich buying Chelsea. Right, first thing he's going to do is going to be great. He's going to start buying players. Like that. No one's ever done that. Like, am I missing something? That's the take of every fan every time. Either they're all gets a big sponsorship deal or a rich person gets involved. Like these stories you're saying, like Neymar's involved in it. Like, well, do you imagine Neymar wants to waste tens of millions of dollars on fucking video? No, I imagine he wants to spend the minimum while getting the maximum from his reputation. And probably, crazy idea, keeping all that money he's making from Nike and whoever else for himself, believe it or not.
Not now. He's not making money from Nike now. Google
it was.
Google that. It was. But yeah, no, right. Listen, I'll tell you this because this is going to blow people's minds a little bit. But one of the things that's coming next year is because we're getting a lot of Saudi Arabian investment and Emirati investment. Okay. So there's a lot of talks behind the scenes right now with some big esports orgs to get Saudi funding for their org, right? And when that happens, you're going to get you are going to get the Man City in esports. That's coming. Yeah, they're all going out to like all these like press junkets and meeting with like the fucking House of Saud like representatives and all sorts because apparently the new dude is like progressive by Saudi standards and he wants to make Saudi Arabia like an esports hub. So this is going on behind the scenes right now, bro.
I can't wait as well for all the virtue signalers to say nothing, to take the money, to smile, to say what great org they are. Like, do everything. These people just scum, aren't they? I know.
I mean, listen. At the end of the day, though, there's always going to be an Ennis Cantor that comes along and shakes things up, right? Like, you know, it doesn't even have to be us. There'll be people that will speak out. Yeah. I'm going to enjoy the chaos that brings. I'm gonna have a front row seat for that. But that's definitely coming. By the way, that's going to be announced soon. The Neom deal is just but the tip of the iceberg. Anyway, let's also talk about washed up Brazilians some more. Fallen. Rumoured to be leaving Team Liquid, heavily rumoured. A rumour I myself heard from, I would say, second-hand sources at best. It was doing the rounds. Yeah, it was doing the rounds at the major. So this is something that's been in the pipeline. But what's really interesting is he is supposedly getting the band back together, according to a report over on Jackson, which, by the way, Jackson are doing great work at the moment. You should give them a follow. They've been right so far with all of the big stories they've broke, despite not having a lot of tenure in the scene. Thumbs up from me. But anyway, Fallen and Coldzera are meant to be coming back together to potentially build what they're calling a Brazilian super team, because everything's a super team if you all have, you know, if you're all washed up in that. So, I mean, I'm astounded at this because on the one hand, Fallen and Coldzera, they always had that like Taz and Neo energy. Very different types of people, very different focuses, very different goals, but magic sort of always happened when they were together. Coldzera, I think, it got in his head a little bit that ultimately he wouldn't have had the career he had if Fallen hadn't given him that opportunity when he first brought him through into that Luminosity roster, and obviously the rest is history. They definitely had a bit of friction between them towards the end of their tenure playing together. If you remember, famously, Coldzera even took over IGL duties when he was in a team with Fallen, which is like still astounding to me that was ever even allowed, because Coldzera is many things. A tactical mastermind is certainly not one of them. But like you see often in relationships, some time apart, it can actually make things work. Now, I don't think you're going to roll back the clock, and some of the other names that are being linked with this roster potentially, you know, like you say, maybe FNX coming back from the dead to join. I'm not vibing with that at all. I don't think you can turn back time. But what do you think?
I think this is actually the ultimate example of the hubris and just just delusional behavior of this specific core of Brazilian players who obviously once upon a time were the number one team in the world with this core, were major winners. Yes, we're one of the all-time great teams. I will just stress 5+ years ago. The fact I have to put a plus on if there are 5 should tell you everything you need to know. Let's review some other things that were happening 5+ years ago. Get Right was still a relevant tier 1 star player. Hiko still played CSGO professionally. People who now are TSM, or I think they were in TSM or whatever, in Valorant, but people from CLG still were people who I cared about. Whatever. I don't even know why they're catching space there, but they were all shit with the ears. Cutler, you know all of them, FNS, all those guys. Right. This is the thing I don't get about this move. I heard this same story like last year that they the vibe was like they wanted to can we get like one last dance or whatever? It's like, you did that already in 2019. Am I missing something?
It's not a last dance at this point.
The difference is it was instead of FNX, you had Phelps in that one. But you literally made the same team that you'd had a couple of years earlier, had success with. You've made it up again. You got to play that year and have majors and big tournaments and all the salaries. You don't get 2 last dances like that. There wasn't like it. Michael Jordan didn't go, well, it's the bloody last dance, isn't it? Listen, we're going out on our shields now, boys. And at the end of the year, just go, not the last dance, anyone. It's not like getting one. It's not like getting a half at the pub before you definitely going home and then going home 5 hours later on the last train, falling. Like, you're out of your fucking mind, mate. This is actually like people. Remember, this is what I hate about this move, Richard, is if I genuinely believed I could sit these guys down and put the truth serum in them and they would all tell me for real, no, I genuinely believe this team can be really good, that we'll all be focused, FNX will practice and we'll be a great team. I would say no problem. Can't fault you for trying it. I don't believe they even actually believe this, Richard. I think it's cynical as fuck. I think for real, they know that this is a waste of everyone's time. But first of all, if you're the big names like Fall and Cold Zero, you won't take the fall if this doesn't work out. You'll still manage to spin your wheels for a while and get your salaries and probably skip out and go elsewhere. Obviously, it'll be people like FNX, etc., who just disappear after probably Fur as well. So I think that what's outrageous about this is not only do I not believe in good faith you actually think it can be a good team, but it shows the contempt this specific group of Brazilians has for the esports industry. They're going to go and waste someone else's thousands and thousands of dollars a month to run this dog shit experiment. As though, by the way, like someone they kicked out of their team 5+ years ago just needed 5.5 years of fucking all the supermodels in Brazil to really get out of his system, and now he's ready to. It's just the stupidest premise of all time, isn't it? Like, it's like some dog shit Hollywood movie premise, isn't it?
Like, listen, I would just say this though. Like, FNX is probably the most baller guy we've ever had in CS. Like, yeah. I think so for sure. Like, but I mean, you can't unring the bell, mate. You can't spend that long out of top tier CS.
Oh, no.
It would be unprecedented if FNX came back now and was competitively relevant. So here's the other aspect to it. Obviously, we just talked about Fur. He's linked with joining as well. I've just given my views on him. I don't need to repeat them. What's astounding to me is the orgs that's being talked about around this team, because, there's apparently, according to the same report, Complexity have had a look at these guys, and I just can't believe that. I can't believe Jason Lake, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I believe Jason is mega frustrated with how things went down, because he gave a lot of himself over to that team, including flying, to meet players in person and everything. He really did build a juggernaut. He wasn't fucking around. But, like, now they've got Messioso over there. Messioso, he watches this program religiously, by the way. He fucking knows what these guys are about. That this isn't so much a last dance as a last fucking bump of coke. Like, it's not. They don't have any designs on. I don't believe they have any designs on winning, personally. Maybe Cold Zero, I think. Maybe Fallen Shore. The other two guys will just be there for a paycheck. And like I said, the future of Brazilian CS is going and developing some of these youngsters. It's going to hurt for the 6 months you have to do it. You're going to be a meme. You're going to lose games. But if they can't learn from Fallen and Cold Zero to improve, then they were never the real deal anyway. I think there are players that could do that. But yeah, if Complexity pick up this team, spoiler, they're not going to. That would just be outrageously backwards for them, personally. Anyway,
I don't think even the angle you're saying about if you get some young guys, and they can't do that, Richard, because like the two main guys you'd need to do it, who you just referenced, the elder statesman, would be Fallen and Cold Zero, the greatest player ever, and then the greatest captain, right? Those are the two guys you'd want. Well, here's the problem. One, Fallen's individual game is washed as fuck. You just have to watch the games, you'll see it. Secondly, he himself would basically tell you, if you go read any of the interviews for the last 2 or 3 years, that he's basically lost his ways in IGL. I even think that's part of why he's trying to go back to Cold Zero in some fucked way. They're doing that thing of like, maybe we just had to be together. That was the secret, some sort of like fucking murder-suicide pact or something they're going to make with each other. And then the part I don't get at all is this, right? It's bad enough that Fallen doesn't really have a grasp on the current meta in his own words. You know this. If you hear behind the scenes the stories of Cold Zero in his last few teams, I know everyone right now is actually, it turns out the secret's out about Elige and Reddit's fucking feasting on the fact that he's a little bit toxic, right?
Oh, yeah.
Cold Zero's worse, yeah. If you guys don't know, Cold Zero's like that, but worse. He's like the one who just tells you the evil shit, So, like, this guy, there's a reason why after FaZe, people weren't lining up to sign this guy, and why he was himself making these weird things where it's like, I'll join, but only temporary. Like, he didn't even have, like, sort of the spirit of, like, I'll work my way back. Like, the guy's he's lost the plot. Like, he was a great player, but he's just gone into that yes man world where he's never wrong somehow. So I have my skepticism if either of these two players can be contributing members of an elite team anymore. Like in some ways, at least they're taking it away from everyone else. They're just going to blow it up without taking top players down with them. But I can't see how it can succeed in any regard in this sense.
No, like I say, I think they'll find themselves. If they don't do this with an org already agreed, I don't think they're getting one. Personally, so they would have to even come up with their own funding. Now, Fallen's definitely the guy with the connections to do that. He could definitely create his own org. Probably might even be something they do have to do. But in terms of a pickup, I think it would be a disaster, and especially for Complexity that have had a rough ride as it is. But anyway, Fallen leaving Team Liquid. What are you laughing about?
I just saw that thing. I was on HLT. I just saw ZeroZero Prospect.
That
was not even real. That's like the Onion satire version of the team that you'd make as a nickname, wouldn't you? I wish we'd thought that up. It's a fucking banging name.
Yeah, it's mental. But anyway, yeah. So obviously, Fallen seems to be out at Team Liquid. Spoiler: obviously, they didn't do very well at the major, as we know. And spoiler: at the major, rumors were abound that the team was essentially broken apart, and this sort of comes into various parts of stories. This one aspect is Fallen definitely out. We'll talk a little bit about Stewie 2K. He's meant to be out as well, potentially with NAF. I'll source that in a second. But let me do something that has unique value rather than just regurgitate other people's reporting. I will tell you things I myself have heard from my extensive array of little birds. So, first thing I heard, you may have noticed if you're a Valorant fan as well, Nitro. Nitro has sort of intimated that he might be leaving 100 Thieves. Well, prior to that, one of the things they were looking at was the prospect of Elige going to play Valorant over there with him, according to...
Yeah, people don't know. There was even that public thing that was a bit weird if you had no interest in Valorant. You know, where it was like they have some sort of like POG group that like the top players are in. And there was some like drama where Elige wanted to be in it and they wouldn't invite him or something. Which again is like, but you aren't a Valorant pro. But so again, that in itself, when I saw that, I even thought that was a bit weird, mate. It looked like he was definitely moonlighting a little bit.
Yeah, but now, apparently, rather than Elige going over to Valorant, the Nitro is meant to be coming back to Liquid, to lead.
Makes sense. They're lacking people. It's one of the few people who fucks with Elige, basically.
Yeah, and, but they've definitely had problems completing out the roster. Liquid have reached out. Could have reached out to a lot of players right now. But yeah, basically Nitro is supposedly coming back to CS to lead this team at Elige's behest. All Elige said was like, it's, pretty much the behind the scenes rumors are Elige has been really despondent with the team. He thinks it's totally regressed ever since Nitro left. He wants to play with Nitro, be it in Valorant or be it in CS, whichever way works. And it looks like Counterstrike has won the day. So Nitro is meant to be coming back to Team Liquid to lead.
Fucking sucks. So this guy, right? Here's the thing, Richard. Like, at least I pick like quality people to fucking die on a hill with fighting. This guy's like, and you know who I'm gonna pick to fight at the end of time? Adren and Nitro. Like, wah wah wah. Boo! Boo! You are aware you're one of the best players ever, Elige. Like, pick some fucking sick riders. You got the most ass ride or die crew of all time. Yours is the Fast and the Furious, where I wish they died at the end. I don't even know why they're catching stray bullets in this episode. Whatever.
Whatever,
Listen, he was all right.
Rostermania, mate. It's fine. We're all a bit delirious, aren't we? So yeah. I mean, listen, like the fucking
family. I'm all about winning these races now. Get this fucking dangerous NOS injection into this car, and let's fucking win some races, motherfucker. Fuck family.
Yeah. So obviously, as well, another aspect to this is there was a report by Nell that Shox.
Was it about something in the French scene?
Yes, it was.
Right, then I'm interested in hearing about Nell's thoughts. Okay, right.
It was not anything about American politics.
It's weird. It is weird, though, isn't it, Richard? How he just always has all that news from Vitality. Oh, sorry, I mean the French scene, but Vitality mainly. You know, it's weird how he always just has that specific news coming on. You know what? It's weird. I wonder what his source network might be. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? Why? It's like, you know, the saddest thing of all. I was complaining to you earlier about the anonymous leakers.
Yeah,
compared to them, he's actually legit. That's the worst part of it all, isn't it? That's how fucking cheeks CSGO is. That he actually probably is like top 3 investigative journalist in the space.
I know. But anyway, he did a report that basically says Shox is in what he calls advanced talks with Team Liquid. It's meant to be an all but done deal. I double checked this. I asked around. Apparently, it's legit because I was like, well, so now we're talking about bringing Nitro back from the dead, Elige, Shox on the roster. What the fuck is going on?
Has anyone told Elige, again, I think maybe he's got the same problem that Fallen does. It's not 2016. It's actually 2021, and we're almost about 2022 now. Like, you are aware, right? It's just, this guy's mental. Like, oh, have you noticed, by the way, I called this ages ago about Team Liquid specifically, and FaZe Clan. Dude, all the modern generation stars, everyone who became a star from 2016, 2017, they're all star fuckers from the guys from the era before. That's why, genuinely, Nico will look you dead in your face and tell you, MSL, never rated him. Washed up Neo, yes, please. Like, they don't see that as like some like discoherence in their thought. Like, they think that makes perfect sense. So the same thing. It's like, listen, I don't even hate the move if we look at who's actually available for Liquid. But again, it's like, why are you just recruiting people who were good like 5 years ago? Like, what is this approach? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, here's what I don't understand. So first of all, I think Shox is one of the greatest players to ever grace the game, obviously, and I knew him before in Source, back when he was part of, you know, teams like Very Games, and I think it was the Thermal Take Dragons was where he ended his Source career before CSGO came rolling around. And I just think he's a fantastic player. He's a really cool dude, as well, as we've said many times down the years. Nice guy, funny guy, you know, likes to party, likes to have fun, doesn't take himself too seriously, is actually a great storyteller, even though he's not that confident in his English. There's lots to like about Shox. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's not about his game, because I thought he was a little bit disappointing at this major just gone. I certainly didn't see him as having done anything to make me think a top-tier team should be beating down the door for him. And honestly, I think this reeks a little bit of the fact that one of the things Team Liquid are probably looking to do, because as we'll talk about in a second, Stewie and Naf seem to be heading out. That's the schism now. Fallen's definitely gone. Him and Elige apparently never clicked. But now Stewie and Naf are going to go. And it's like, when you lose 3 big names like that, how do you drown out all of the noise that fans are going to make about you losing 3 big names? Well, you go for some sort of outrageous, flamboyant signing. You bring in a Cam Newton or something like that, right? And, you know, everyone goes, oh, remember his rookie season? And it's like, yeah, but that is never going to happen again. So I think that's what's happening here.
Even though I actually think it's actually even like a good reference, right? Like a once great player. Did you actually just pick Cam Newton? Because he also does have some mad fruity outfit. Yeah, I knew it. I knew exactly how he went there.
You see, I'm operating on operating on the meta level motherfuckers can't get on. You feel me? Like, so, like, literally, they dress the same.
And they do, it's true.
They do. Yeah. But anyway, you know, like, so I don't know. I think Shox to Liquid, if it does go ahead, I don't think that does anything for Liquid. He's certainly not fit to replace the players they're losing. And when you consider it would be Nitro as well, and the other player they've been linked with, according to, I believe this was a rumor from the CIS region leaker Overdrive.
The best.
Yes, I mean, he does have a bit of a checkered record, but he has a Telegram group where he puts out insider information. I've sent that to Sam if he wants to bring it up. And basically, he says they're trying to sign OC as well. Listen,
Don't hit that move.
Fuck with that big time. OC has deserved a chance to play in tier 1, like as much as almost anyone that's grinded out tier 2. Clearly too good for the level of opposition he's playing right now. And I think OC actually, but the problem you've got with that is if you bring in OC, and let's assume it is Shox and Nitro and Elige, what's Nitro doing? Nitro ended his career as the AWPer and IGL, and I don't know, you put him back on rifles. So as a core 4, I don't know. I think this is very regressive for Liquid. There'll be a lot of pressure on OC to essentially, add to that firepower that Elige is going to bring.
I don't think it's a very good lineup, personally. Like, basically, all Shox brings right now is he's a really good veteran. Like, he can win clutches. He's a solid player. He obviously can play on LAN. Yeah. But I agree. If you watch the Major, he's never going to be a star player again. In fact, the sad tangent, which we won't go into because it's about people's personal lives, but basically, if people know a little bit about Shox's personal life, I believe he has, like, a significant other. I think they even have a family together. So, actually, as far as I know, the sort of rock and roll Shox, which is the one that you would make the movie about, he's sort of gone. And in some ways, as much as I don't
watch the Counterstrike for sure.
Yeah, but as much as I don't want to play into the whole thing, because I do think it's slightly over-exaggerated in art, the idea that, it's only when the person has all the demons and the substance abuse problems that they're really great. I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of brilliant people who've got clean or just never were in that world. But the problem is, in Shox's career, it's a bit like when people are mean and say that, like, Fat Cold Zero was better. It's like the same concept. Basically, the Shox that just became like just a normal guy is just a normal player, unfortunately. He's not the great, mercurial talent he once was that genuinely, if people don't know. The analogy for modern day fans would be what you just saw Nico do at the Major. That used to be Shox. He was the #1 rifle in the world. He was the guy who would just dominate any game, any team with good teammates, bad team. Right? He's not going to do that in Team Liquid. Listen, he could be an all right player, but I agree with you. The problem with that team is it's a bunch of names, aside from OC, who I agree deserves a shot, that are just sort of like, yeah, that's okay. Who else have we got? And it's like at the end, Elige would have to mega hard carry this team. And even then, I don't know that the team works. Like, what's the concept? Like, by the way, the Nitro angle, I don't know why people are clamoring for him to come back. First of all, it's a terrible sign that you just left and went to another game. That's already, and not in a game that didn't even exist, by the way. Not even one that has like a scene that you have a reason to want to go there. And then think about this: the only year of Nitro's career you could say he was a good or a very good in-game leader was probably 2018, right, when they had Zeus as their coach. Yep. That was because they had Zeus as their coach. Like, Zeus might have been the best coach in the world at the time. He was up there with Zonic. Like, I've never seen, when I saw Nitro play before that as the IGL, he just did it because he had to, because they had the Stanislaw issue, or before that they had the issue where obviously they kicked out Adren. Then after the fact, in 2019, when they had Stewie, first of all, Stewie's entry game clearly changed their entire team. And then secondly, the team themselves will tell you this. They just shot everyone in the head. It wasn't like some great IGL job, was it? It was one that, like, as much as I hate to, like, say someone who won all those many titles didn't do much, he sort of all the people who ever win loads of titles, looks like he didn't do much, mate. So to me, I agree. He's just an okay tier 1 AWPer, and as far as I can tell, maybe an okay IGL. And this is the worst detail. I get the vibe doesn't really want to be an IGL. Like, I don't think that's necessarily what he wants in the game. So yeah, who the fuck's going to lead this team? What's the structure going to be? Just seems like a mishmash of names. Like, I mean, listen, I'm not as big a fan of the team that the players that are going to leave are going to make, but I realize the NA scene's just in dire straits right now.
Yeah, I mean, so I can speak a little bit. Basically, Nitro, like anyone who knows the guy, obviously I had the pleasure of meeting him a number of occasions. He's just a super chilled out, like one of the few people who his age is his age. If anything, he's a little bit older than his years. Not like the Thorin's law, where you take away 5 years and you get a lot of like mid-20 somethings that are really under socialized. He is like an adult. Which is an amazing concept, right? And therefore, by that metric, he naturally sort of commands respect when he's on a team with kids. And Elige basically looks at that sort of personality trait, sees himself as having it, because Elige is like a really smart dude. There's no getting away from that. And, they think that that's the type of leadership they need on the roster. For me, whoever they have as the 5th, because I'm going to take it as a given that Stewie and Naf are going to go. They might hold on to Naf. Stewie's definitely gone. There's a lot of pressure on that 5th to be a blockbuster signing to even have any chance, I think, of this roster, mixing it up with the top 10 ever again. And to your point, we'll talk about Stewie and Naf now. The same person who's Overdrive said EG are going to sign them. So we'll talk about both of this at once because, listen, I don't think there's anything to say about EG cutting Stanislaw, Obo, and Miku. Basically, Obo and Miku, I feel a bit sorry for Obo. I don't really see what he did to get cut. I don't really see what Miku did to get cut, but my understanding was he was only on a relatively short-term contract anyway because and it was for the primarily because they were based in Europe, and it sort of came together at the last minute. He was in talks with other teams. I think he'll be okay. I don't know where Obo goes, frankly, because if he's not part of either EG or Liquid, he's basically like a floppy type player. Good enough to play in Tier 1, but won't have the opportunities, and he'll find himself on teams like Triumph and Extra Salt, and it's just
Valorant.
Or Valorant, of course, which, it's a tragedy, right? He's a really talented dude. But anyway, listen, Stanislaw, fuck off to Valorant now, mate. Just, you wanted to do it for all this time. I can't see him getting any more opportunities as a top-tier IGL. So that obviously leaves Cirque and Breezy, who, by the way, looked like they didn't even want to be alive when they were playing for EG. They, faced like a smacked ass the entire time. And they're going to be hooking up with Stewie and Naf, supposedly. Now we're talking, I hope they don't bring Daps in to be the IGL player. We'll talk about why that might be a possibility in a second. Oh, no, don't. No.
I mean, I basically got the message from my sources that when they brought him back to be a coach, the original thing was they wanted him to be IGL and he just chose to coach instead. So I get the vibe they will do it, mate. I think that's possibly on the horizon. That's just speculation on my part.
Yeah, well, okay, so, I mean, first of all, let's just look at that 4 without Daps being in it. It does need a good IGL, but I'll say this. I think, listen, I know Cirque's been terrible for a year, but I don't hold it against him personally. I think the bottom line is I think that team was just fundamentally dysfunctional in the way all Stanislaw teams end up being, and you can't really assess anyone's performance. I mean, at the end of the day, Breezy is probably still one of the best riflers in NA, probably one of the best riflers in the world. He's still in there. He still exists. And so, I think he will come back to the light. I think Cirque will as well. I think maybe Stewie, who knows, maybe Stewie's the IGL and they get a sick 5th. I don't know how I feel about that, but Stewie certainly thinks he can do in-game leading. Elige, he complimented Stewie's in-game leading, so if he has a player like Elige's buy-in, there must be something to it. Fallen even complimented it too, which is why he didn't feel so bad about acquiescing and giving him the role. So, and if you add Naf's just a reliable soldier, never going to be the most spectacular player, but he's, he can AWP, he can rifle, he's really good. So I don't know, mate. I think this is the new. I mean, it's hardly an accolade these days, but if I contrast this EG lineup to the Liquid lineup, it's day and night. EG are the number 1 team in NA if they secure this, right?
Yeah, but my problem as well, it's like with the Liquid one, it's like, what is the structure of this team? Like, you've literally taken 4 players who all were in contention for best player on their team. Like, and listen, I do believe it's possible on teams, depending on mentality, to make it work with the resources and sort of like take turns or whatever, like on this map, I'm getting more of my spots. You can do that. It's just that in most teams, it tends to be that people, they want the status that comes with being the star player. And I think even those players are a bit of a mismatch because on the one hand, Elige and Naf were arguably the 2 NA players who, through all the ups and downs, kept their form. They're both pretty good players. I don't think they've ever been bad players, even during the online period. Meanwhile, Cirque and Breeze absolutely can't fucking say that for 1 second. They were terrible during the whole online period. They basically only had the period when Zeus just joined, when they were still fragging out. But beyond that, like, I would literally ask those guys, did you just not try at all during the online era? By the way, if you say yes to that, you're already in trouble. And if you say no, then you're just bad. You're just bad at the game, mate. Like, it's not like the online period was 3 months. It was fucking almost like 2 years at this point in time, over 1.5 years. So I have my questions about whether the form they'll be at. With that said, though, unfortunately, I've been around Counterstrike too long. And if you know the way Counterstrike works, right, when you make a super team like this, I'll give you the analogy. You remember when they got FaZe Clan and FaZe failed the PGL Major in 2017 and they brought in Olafmeister from Fnatic and Guardian from Navi. Yeah. Now, listen, when Guardian was in Navi, before he joined, but the day day before he put a FaZe jersey on, he was like half the player he used to be. Just washed up, phoning it in, clearly didn't fuck with Simple. Team's just gone to shit. We're not winning anything. Whatever. I'm just going to do whatever. And then Olaf Meister, he'd lost all his star skills. He wasn't that great anymore. The second they joined FaZe, though, they did have a mental honeymoon, if people remember, for like a month or so. And they were one of the best teams in the world, and everyone just went absolutely nuts in the server. So there is a world, I do think, where this team, if they get the right fifth player, could have a mad honeymoon period. It could resurrect some of these talents. Because the saddest thing I think about the online period is it just shows why all those fan comments that always frame every action a pro player takes by how much money they make are actually not based on reality at all. Yeah. No player, like, think about the players we talked about in this episode who were egomaniacs. I've referred to like Cold Tear or something. He doesn't really sit down and go, well, I make 20,000, so how will that affect what my next decision is? He makes his decision based on what he is as a human, what he thinks is good, bad, am I the best, am I lazy, am I someone who practices? They don't actually ever factor the money in at all. So the sad thing to me is I do think some of these players like Breeze and so some of them probably did just fucking phone it in for months and months and months.
Oh, yeah.
And they even did, even though they were semi-wrong, think, well, there'll always be lands again, and then people will see how good I am, and then I'll get it all back. Even though, by the way that last major went, for EG especially, none of you deserve a spot in tier 1. Like, that was an outrageous audition. The fuck was that? So the problem is, I sort of agree with you. On paper, this is worth a crack. Like, it is some really good bunch of players. I have my questions about how the roles work out, but I would agree, out of the two, Liquid and EG, this is the better one. I just still think even this one, it's like, what sort of message are we sending to the scene that you can do what Breeze and Cirque did for the last year and a half, and you still get a tier 1 spot? Like, there's something fucked about that, you know. I don't really vibe with that.
Yeah, and I just realised as well, obviously, when we were talking about Liquid, I did leave Grim out of the equation. So
As they did many times.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I've actually done. I must have walked into Alicia's mind for a moment. But no, I think Grim will obviously be the fifth over there, and in which case, you know, I'm still not mega impressed, even though I do think Grim is a good prospect and is developing quite nicely. You know, but also as well, I mean, like, the Liquid were supposedly like looking at a ton of like even CIS players they were looking at. This MHL guy, if you've heard of him, like Polish Opera, I think he's been touted as potentially joining some tier 1 orgs in this off season. So it seems to me they are scrambling to put something together and quickly, whereas EG seem to have the more coherent you know, lineup. Now,
one thing I want to ask you is this, though. It's like, listen, no matter what anyone thinks of where he is at the moment, and one of the reasons I slightly regret that topic's come out about Elige is because it's come out at probably the worst time. Like, everyone, he's grown and matured. Like, listen, he is still a bit of a diva, but he's about 10 times better than he was 5 years ago. It's just that the story wasn't fully out there, so fans didn't know, and they've just started their speculation now. But the reason why I bring that up is because, like, the one element I would say to Elige is this. It's like, listen, mate, I would agree some of these last lineups were flawed in Liquid and they didn't accomplish what they should. But it's like, how many excuses do you need? Think about who this guy has had next to him in teams. He's had young Simple, who, by the way, was one of the best players in the world. He had fucking Hiko when Hiko was still good. Then later he had Twists when Twists was already emerging as a superstar player. And then for most of the time period I'm talking about, he's had Naf, who's one of the best, most stable players in the world, basically never been bad for a 3-month period in probably 5 years at this point in time. How much more talent do you need, mate? Like, do you ever stop and look in the mirror and go, maybe I'm a bit fucked up in some way? Like, maybe I'm great individually, but I don't do something as a teammate? Because that's the same thing. I noticed people resurrected this article I did about Simple from like 2016, where it was like an open letter to him. And spoiler, whenever I do open letters like that, one, it is a letter to the person, but it's also supposed to sort of articulate their problems I see and sort of give my philosophical take on how they can get over it, so potentially it could apply to everyone in every different field, right? And basically the gist of what I tried to explain to Simple there was that, like, you actually need to use the fact that you're the best player to have like a leadership effect on your teammates. And you can even have it as in you just always do your job as a carry, and then you give them leeway. You don't blame them for things where they're not as good as you. I don't feel like Elige ever got that message, dude. I feel like he's still in the vein of like, well, I got my 30 frags, where's yours? It's like, we're playing different roles in the team. Like, this guy, somehow, this is what's weird about team sports, is obviously you can, I mean, you can see it's right now with fucking Odell Beckham Jr., you can still be a fantastic individual talent, but if you don't get the team concept, you will fail, mate. It doesn't matter how good you are individually.
Yeah. So that's the whole NA shit show. Now, why would Daps be a potential IGL over at EG, Richard? He's a coach now. Well, funnily enough, I was just talking about this with Sean Gares yesterday. I did an interview for an episode of the Richard Lewis show. It's more Valorant themed, and talking about him. But obviously, Daps retired from Valorant to come back and be a coach of this EG team. And now EG, it's been confirmed, are in talks with Malek, who got kicked out of G2 after their failure to win the major, which, by the way, that being the first cut of the new Carlos era of taking G2 to the next level, came out of left field. I don't think Malek has done particularly a poor job or anything like that, but he is out, and it looks like Daps, ever the cuckold, will be potential. Look at your face. Ever the cuckold. Now he's going to get wrecked. He retired from a whole new game. You know, he retired to come back and do an
interview subject for that one, though. Sean Gares. There's another person who knows about the fucking fucking masochism. Why do we do it to ourselves, Sean? Like, again, what was the title of the topic? Like, NA IGLing and sadomasochism in the modern, in the 21st century. Like
Sean Gares, and what's worse, CBT or being an IGL in NA. We didn't really talk a lot about that, but we did sort of have a laugh on air about the Echo Fox days, which, and obviously he was like talking about how Peacemaker led the French Revolution and turned the French players against him. So it was just him and Shazam getting wrecked from all sides. I'm sorry, Misfits. Yeah, yes, my bad. Yeah. Anyway, so basically, I feel, mate, what's it gonna take for Daps? Like, mate, you've got to get an evil streak in you. You've got to fight back.
I know.
You've got to fight back. You've literally retired as a player from an entire new game where you had prospects to come back and do this. You didn't even get to stamp your authority on this team. You literally had to stand in as a player because Stanislaw took a hiatus. And now you're just getting fucking replaced. Yes, by someone who is a better coach than you, unquestionably, just on experience. But come on, dude, like, something's got to go right for Daps eventually. This is like fucking unbelievable. It blows my mind.
Sadly, you are right, though. He just doesn't stand up for himself for some reason. I basically addressed this in my interview with him. It's like, he almost like pats the guy on the back who's just going in to fuck his wife now. Like, give me a break, mate. At least like seems slightly annoyed with it.
So look forward to your visits. It's wild, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, if he is the IGL of this team, which some people could sort of see happening because of his relationship with Breezy and Cirque, obviously, famously the sort of the talent whisperer there back in the NRG days.
I can't handle. That's the part of it all I can't handle, Richard. Forget the other part about the IGLing. It's when every time the cool kids leave him to go and sit at the cool kid table and leave him looking all nerdy. But then when the more cool kids don't want to fuck around with Breeze and Circuit anymore, they then come over like, hey dude, you want to walk home? Like, and then he just instantly, all right, guys, like, takes them back. Like, have you never even seen a fucking movie? Like, the whole point is when you get the superpowers at the end of the movie, you're supposed to spurn the people who wanted to be with you moron. You're not supposed to actually go, oh, cool, can I be in your gang now? You're supposed to go, no, now I'm like Spider-Man or some shit. I can just fucking wreck you all, can't I?
So I don't know. I mean, like, it remains to be seen. I still think that team will need a good IGL. How do you feel about Malek joining EG to work with them?
What I want Daps to do is this. When you finally get a position where you can be the IGL or the coach, you end your movie. Spoiler, this isn't even like the actual plot, so it's not even a real spoiler. Like the end of the never-ending story. You come in on your dog dragon and chase those motherfuckers, Breeze and Tarek, into a fucking dumpster. That's how you end your movie, Daps. Instead, you just came back. It's like you came back like, hey guys, you want to throw me in that dumpster again? Like, why are you doing this? Why are you back at the beginning of the movie? Before you went in that really weird old guy's shop? The oral, not whatever. Watch it, kids.
Shout out to Falco.
It's a straight fire movie. Straight fire.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, so how do you feel about Malek coaching that group of players we just talked about? Do you think that that's going to be a good foil for him? You think this is a good move?
I mean, remember, people are going to make the mistake. I think this is like the Extaz one. Like, yeah, but can he only coach the French? But he hasn't been coaching French people, essentially, in the context of French culture for years now. They've obviously had Nico since like what, autumn last year or something. So realistically, I do think it's obvious this guy can communicate. And by the way, he's also, unlike Extaz, he's been on my Stratbook episode. He's totally willing to speak in English. He's absolutely fluent. He's not a guy who holds back at all in that sense. So I actually get the sense, personally, Malek will be a good coach. I don't get the vibe, personally, from talking to him and watching his teams, like he's this strategic genius. I don't think he's like fucking what people think Zonic is. But I do think he's one of those guys where if we're going to make Zonic like the glaive of coaches, I think he's like an MSL. He's a guy who will always run a quality team. He knows how he wants to play the game. He knows what to do with different players. I don't know if he'll make you the #1 team. That's obviously asking a lot, but I think he can definitely run a competent team. It's more the personnel that I find a bit crazy. Like, this guy is seriously going to have to fucking go hard if he's going to make this group of players work. Like, there are some enormous egos in this squad.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that's always been Malek's issue. Like, I know him reasonably well, and you know, it sort of seems to me that where he sort of struggles is in the battle of egos. He will often take the high ground and sort of not fight and not push back. And unfortunately, that isn't necessarily always going to work with some star players. You can't really give them all of their own way all of the time and impose your will on a team. So I think that's one area where he struggled. He's not as forceful as he should be. You know, when I think about, again, the perfect balance of pragmatism but also determinism, you know, I do think of someone like Zeus, who I think is pretty underrated, actually. He's like a guy, by the way, he's out there as a free agent, so it's definitely someone that should be getting picked up by a top-tier team soon. He will, for the right team, I'm sure he'll come back. At the moment, yes, mind you, he is making a fuck ton of money, just living like a life as a Brazilian influencer, doing deals with like Gucci and all sorts of shit. So he you know, maybe it would have to be the right deal. But, you know, I think about a guy like him and how he can be super cool and super chill, but if you want to fuck with him, he'll definitely push back. And, you know, we saw that famously in Team Liquid with Stanislaw, where, you know, they were at an impasse, a battle of wills, and Zeus definitely won it out. Unfortunately, Malek doesn't really seem to have that to him. He's a bit too pragmatic, and so yes, dealing with NA egos when you're a sort of passive, you know, relaxed guy, it'll be a much bigger challenge than working with Nico, for sure. So I wish him the best of luck if that move comes to fruition, but I think it'll be a difficult one for him. You mentioned Xtaz. Obviously, we'll have to talk about the big one, the sort of crazy roster mashup that happened between Astralis and Vitality. So what happened was, basically, Vitality obviously went to the major. They were really let down by their young prospect, Kyojin, who probably put in one of the worst performances at a major, you know, up there with the likes of Shara and Zeus and all the other great names we've loved to meme on down the years. And so Shox was out, Kyojin was out, but surprisingly as well, Xtaz was out. And as we've told you on previous episodes of this podcast, this was because there was Magisk and Zonic were always a duo. Dupree decided he wanted to be in on it too. They were reaching out to teams and essentially saying, you know, listen, you can sign us, but it has to be all of us. And Vitality went, you know what? Fuck it. Let's do it. And so Xtaz, a coach who, for me, it is one of the best in the scene, finds himself fired, very similar to Nork over at NIP, right? Like, you're cutting me. Why? I'm great. Oh, we're replacing you with Device. All right, yeah, I've got to take that one on the chin. I think it's the same. I think the only one you can realistically replace Xtaz with is Zonic. But it creates this interesting dynamic because you've got Magisk, Dupree, Zonic having all this chemistry, and they're going into this relatively sort of unknown you know, world where now you've got this language barrier, you've got Apex as an IGL, you've got Ziwu, a star player. It's a very strange roster, and it's a move I absolutely did not see coming, even though it was apparently all sort of agreed upon prior to the major. So what do you make of this? Because we haven't talked about this roster move. It literally happened while we were on broadcast.
Yeah, the only problem I have with this move, basically, like I'm like everyone else, it's one of those moves, like famously, you remember the one where Simple and Flamey were going to join. I think it was actually, I think they were still SK at the time. I think they were still SK at the time, like in 2017. Yeah. Was it 2017? I think it was beginning of 2018, maybe. Right. Basically, when that move was going to happen, it's not that I thought it would work, definitely. It's just who the fuck wouldn't pay to watch that? It sounds crazy, right? It's like a freak fight in MMA. Like, it's just such a weird premise. You'd watch it, right? Who doesn't want to see, like, Ziwu try and team up with Magisk and Ziwu? And Dupree, rather. Sounds really interesting on paper. I just don't know how it's going to work in the server. Like, I think there's so many factors people are overlooking because of how brilliant the names sound. Like, the two factors basically that come to mind immediately for me is, one, is how is Zonic going to use ZeroZero? Because I could see a world where that's the good part of this. Like maybe Zonic has a different philosophy of how he wants to use him, or maybe he's going to be the number one player because how he gets set up in this team. That could be really amazing. Or maybe we're about to find out Ixtaz was the ZeroZero whisperer, and actually no one else can get the best out of this guy. People are overlooking that angle. Like ZeroZero's played in one team ever with one coach ever and a couple of player changes, and he didn't have to change too much himself. So you can't always take for granted they'll be as good. I hope he's going to be better. The other angle for me is this. Everyone for the last year has basically been giving Astralis a pass, and it's because after they got the players back, Glaive and Zipnix came back in that, they did start winning tournaments, and they won the best teams at the end of last year. Remember, guys, we're almost at the end of November. Like, 2021 has been and gone. What have those players done this year? And remember, I'm not the one saying, look, he's a competent player. I'm not the one saying this. They're the ones saying that. They're the ones that Dupree was out there defending Lucky from day one. They're the ones claiming this guy can pin. We have to give him time and he can become a great player. In that scenario, it's like I said about the story with FaZe. It's like, well, now I'm going to take you at face value and I'm going to listen to what you said and I'm going to treat you with that expectation. So one thing I have a problem with is people like Dupree and Magus, people who have been top 20 players in the year. They have been MVPs. In the case of Magus, he was a major MVP. You have to eventually do that again. I'm not just sitting around waiting 2 years for you to be good. So I think on paper, these are great signings. In the actual server, I am way more skeptical. Like, I personally thought Magus, no joke, was tracking to become an IGL and sort of do a sideways move in his career. If he's not, if Apex is the IGL, then Magus, you better get fucking fragging again, mate. Like, there's no more just phoning in performances. And then for Dupree, it's just been too long since I've seen the real Dupree. Like, he was one of the most consistent players ever. Almost every year he was like a legit top 20 level player. I don't put it this way, this year he fucking ain't going to be, and I don't know where he's going to be at for the rest of his career. So the only thing I'll say is this, is I actually do think Dupree's one of the only ones, and Magus as well, I'll throw them on. They're the only ones who never seemed to actually interface with the PR aspect of all the bullshit that they were doing in Astralis. They never really did interviews much and tried to say whether it was good or bad. So generally, I get the vibe they could be two of the ones who actually still want to compete and be at the top. I personally don't think Glaive and Zipnix do. I think they had a different agenda completely with their signings. So I like the idea, but I think this is like one where it looks more appealing on paper than it is in the server. Like, I get why everyone needs to make a super team now because Navi is unbeatable. But I just don't think this is as certain as other people do. I'm interested to watch it, but I think there's plenty of things could go right and wrong with this one.
Yeah, I mean, so similar thoughts to me, although I will say, if you look at all the teams and all the moves that have already happened in this Rostermania season, for me, Vitality are the clear winners.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like put it this way, the level of performance from Kyojin was just so unacceptable. I do feel sorry for the. I mean, I'm saying kid. You know, he's older than Masuta, who was performing to a much better degree, and I definitely feel sorry for Masuta a little bit. But you know, ultimately, I think if this team has to hit the ground running, there can be no excuses. You're bringing in a coach who knows already how to use the two players. You've got ZeroZero, who, remember, is meant to be this guy like, he will be the one to usurp Simple from his throne. Spoiler, he would need to do some incredible shit for that to ever be a reality. I'm not saying it can't happen, but you know, you would need Simple to like maybe move to Valorant and ZeroZero to do like insane things for 5 years and win all the biggest trophies. But you know, whatever, that could happen. But for me, I feel that Vitality, it's definitely a step in the right direction. I thought they were underwhelming at the major, actually. I think 5th to 8th sort of doesn't tell the full story. They looked like a dead team. They looked out of ideas. So, yeah. And also, yeah, the leadership issue. I don't think it's a given Apex keeps the crown. I don't think so. Do you?
No. I mean, I would hope it's at least like they're going to try it out. Like, you know, it's his team initially, and then maybe they consider swapping. And there's actually a point that someone made on a show I've done that hasn't come out yet. So I'll actually raise it here because I thought it was a good point to make. Another angle that you can take when you analyze moves, even though the example I'm going to give turned out not to be correct, it's just that if they'd kept their word, it would have been. You remember what I always used to say for the first 3 months of the Cloud9 lineup that Henry had was technically it doesn't actually matter if this specific lineup isn't that good, as long as you have the money there to still change a player. For example, like if you can upgrade a player or get another good player in, then whatever does work about the lineup you keep and then you add to it, right? Like I do think that applies to this team though, because if they've spent the kind of salary I'm assuming they're paying to Magus, Dupree and Zonic to lure him over, like you're not just going to try this for 6 months or 3 months and then chuck it in the bin. So the good news, in my opinion, is this. If Apex doesn't work out, you do a swap, or you do bring another player in. If Masuta doesn't make it, then he is out. You bring in another player. Since you're an international team now, all you have to have is just a core that makes sense, and you can do the move that makes it better, because at least the starting pieces are good.
Yeah, I mean, for real. But like I say, there's a lot of question marks around it. You know, I think, honestly, I think Magisk might want to still be in IGL. I think it's probably better if you have a Danish coach and a Danish IGL rather than...
And they've worked together.
Yeah,
they've already got history, yeah.
Exactly. I feel that, you know, Xtaz leaving sort of makes Apex as an IGL almost a little bit redundant. And I also feel like I want to see the sick entry frag in Apex again, frankly. You know, I think he did a good job as an IGL, but I was never sold on him being a top tier IGL. Like, I think this was one of those, you give it to the personality rather than the talent, rather than the ability. And in that sense, it's a similar move to Nitro, who we've talked about. It's almost like, you know, everyone else takes a step backwards rather than you taking a step forward.
Oh, I agree.
But I think, you know, and I think Apex has done admirably. But you know, Magisk stood in for Glaive and Astralis back at that time. They didn't miss a beat.
Oh, they were good still. He was very good.
So what does that tell you? So yeah, I'll be interested to see who gets the IGL kind of role here. But I think this is a very exciting team. I think if they come out swinging, I don't think anyone's gonna topple Navi as things stand.
But I don't see how this team could be worse than the previous version of Vitality. I feel like it has to at least be like worth a crack.
It can't be worse than the previous version of Astralis either.
Oh no,
you know, there's no way.
No, exactly.
You know, you think about it. If this was Astralis they were at, you would be replacing Lucky with Zewu, right? So you know, it's fucking.
And the prospect that Zewu can still frag out and then have these pieces, it's just exciting in itself. Then he will be capable of maybe matching up and winning some of these tournaments, etc. I'll also say, at the risk of sounding like an Elige type Nico Starfucker, because this is a take from like 2016 or 2015. The dream of having like Dupree and Apex as your entry duo is pretty fire on paper, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, put it this way: this has to be. So right now, I think what we're going to see at the start of the year, as things stand with the rosters that have been acquired, you know, Navi are going to be the clear number one team. I don't think Gambit are bouncing back. I think that this shit run they had at the major, even though they got to the semi-finals and the poor performances and the criticism, I think it's got inside their head a little bit. They lost some games over at this V4. They lost the fucking Fiend at LAN. So, you know, just putting that out there. But anyway, I think you're going to see like Navi, G2, because G2's about to spend big, and obviously this Vitality lineup. I think they're going to be the three teams fucking around with each other at the top, with Navi clear winners for me at the start of the year. Speaking of G2, there's talk, and remember, Carlos was seen talking to the Navi owner and hanging out with him, obviously, at the major. They did a little funny segment together where they trash talked each other. But there's been another rumor again from the Overdrive dude that the young Navi Juniors player that everyone's raving about, Monasy, he is supposedly being offered out. Navi accept. He's too good to play in an academy team, even though he's only 16. His stats are ridiculous. He is farming that tier 2 academy level of player, but they can't bet him in because he's a simple type player in all of his roles and all of his abilities. They can't put him into this Navi team.
Wait a minute. This is the level of clown world that Navi that's right, clone world. That's right. Listen up, CIS. The level of clown world that we live in is, for all those years, simple. It's just in like the bad Navi, and then he's got electronic, but there's only him and electronic. Everyone else. Now he's got him electronic bit. Oh, now there's too many. Oh, it's like buses. 2 of them come along. I've got another bloody goat in the way, and I'm not going to tell him, what is this shit? Like, what were all those years for? It's for nothing.
Oh, no, but here's the thing, right? Here's what I will say though. I'm not coming aboard on the Monasy hype train. I've seen him; he looks very good. Obviously, it's relevant to the opposition. But I literally saw an interview that I read over on HLTV, and they're asking him, a 16-year-old player, who, by the way, stop gambling on stream, mate. You're not supposed to be doing that, right? They're asking him, a 16-year-old player, what he thinks about Device. Who gives a fuck? Literally, like a line of questioning is like, "What do you think of NIP?" And they go, "Oh, well, they've got device and all that." And then they go, "So what do you think about devices for?" Who cares? You're not even fit to tie your shoes. Like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? That's like asking the water boy, like, what do you think about Brady down at the, no one gives a motherfucking fuck. What are you talking about?
And by the way, I'll put this out there as well. This is where people I'll even use Zero as the example. Zero has ruined it for all rookies. And by the way, Bit hasn't helped either. Because, dude, people also talk like it's impossible this Monasy guy does anything except tear the world up. Like, he just has to be like a top 5 player.
I know,
he never played against tier 1 effectively. They give it like you're going to kill some of these players metaphorically if you do this to them. Like, you can't put this level of expectation on when they've never been there. And by the way, this move itself basically does that. It basically says, yeah, you are going to be our Zero, mate. Just come on into the team.
Yeah, and put it this way, like, I mean, he's definitely a confident dude. He also said, like, I'm definitely ready for tier 1. I agree, but...
Nafani, yeah, we all heard that one before.
Yeah, true. But, you know, at the end of the day, like, when it is a clear and obvious talent, like, there are parallels to Ziwu for this kid, for sure.
By the way, wasn't that so egregious? Because we were the only ones keeping that storyline going about Nafani, where, you know, he kept doubling down, Richie. He didn't just say it once. He said it 2 or 3 times in interviews, even during the major. He kept going like, I don't think I actually have any. There'll be no pressure on LAN. No, I play the same online as I do online. And then the second they got banged out in the semi, right, his interview quote was like, well, no one can deny we made top 4 our first major. It's like, what a mad pivot that was. Like, what are you talking about?
I think the pressure got to us a little bit. Whoa, how? You said it wasn't possible. You said you were stoic. Like, it's motherfucking different when a crowd's cheering. It's motherfucking different when you can feel that, like, evil hoodoo of people willing you to fail because you're the onliners. It's fucking harder when all the mistakes are amplified and blown up. Like, this is why we never had LAN, even when we were doing it at LAN. The crowd is an integral part of esports. There are certain types of plays you can't make because players just hold down their microphone and they listen out for sound plays and wiggle their crosshair around and fans react to it. It is a different world, But to your point about Monasy, I think... yeah, listen, if this kid does sign to, like, G2, that's the rumor, that apparently Carlos is like, can I have Simple? And they went, no, we won't sell him for any amount of money. And then he said, well, what about this Monasy kid? Like, you're already saying you're open to offers for him. And he's like, all right, then $250,000 is yours. Like, so it's not even a mega buyout. And obviously, from Carlos's perspective, he is the type of guy, by the way, who would look to, like, how can I, if I can't have Simple, how do I get the next Simple? He will think about it in those terms. So it is a plausible signing. I think the problem I've got is, that, sure, I think Nico will probably highly rate him, you know, all that FPL stuff and blah, blah. But, I mean, for me, it's like you say, if you're coming in as essentially a star player to come into G2, replace the teammates that just got you runners-up at the major, and you're 16, and suddenly you're playing alongside Nico and Hunter, all of a sudden, like, yeah, the pressure's totally different. I'm like you, I don't think it's a given that a 16-year-old kid comes in and carries this team. And as talented as he is, I'm going to reserve judgment. I didn't put that expectation on Ziwu. I didn't put that expectation on Rops when he was the new hotness. I think you've got to let players, like, develop at tier 1. You've got to give them that 3 to 6 month grace period while they bed in, personally.
Yeah, to me, they have to also do another massive... This can't be the only one. It has to be like Rops and Monasy come. Like, if there's a world where Nico can just be one of the best players and Rops is really good and then the Monasy guy can develop, that's fine. But what I'm saying basically is, to expect this guy to be one of the best in year 1 is ridiculous. And if he's in G2, he has to be one of the best literally from year 1, because you're baking your team so that Nico can win the next major. That should be literally what the goal on the whiteboard in the office is. What team wins Nico the next major? So does an unknown, I know Eddie, it's going to get not unknown, functionally unknown Russian player, is he going to be one of the top 5 players in the world? No, he is not in 2022 going to be a top 5 player. That's just unrealistic. Now listen, maybe if he's so talented, he might be 2 years from now or 3 years from now, but that ain't the track, as I've just pointed out, that G2's on. G2's already done their year of giving the team a chance. This is the year you have to win. Like, 2022 for G2 has to be about being number 1, because with Nico, you can do it. That's the first piece you need to be able to do that. So that's why on this deal, I don't hate it. There aren't that many options available, but I do think people are almost penciling it in their mind that it's just good, that part's going to work, and it's the other players. Like, whoa. No. And in fact, even that line you said, as much as I like the confidence, man, that smacks of naivety. Like, I'm going to do a tweet like this just after I talk about basically. But the idea that he's like, I'm sure I'm ready for tier 1. How the fuck would you know? How would you know?
Yeah, you're right, man. It's like it's a real different world. And also, by the way, all the pundits, all the kind of thinkers about the game, all the casters, commentators, the fans, they're holding you to a very different standard now. Wait until what it's like when you're playing alongside Nico and you whiff a few shots and all the people are watching you do it, and then G2 fans are going, "You're costing us this series, you're costing us this game." Wait until that rude awakening, because I'll tell you, it ain't nice. Go and talk to guys like LNZ, go and talk to guys like Lucky, where it's like, "Oh yeah, he's totally ready," and then boom, you flop, and suddenly no one wants to know you. In fact, like LNZ, Nip, which we'll talk about in a minute, and LNZ's just gone back. They're going like, yeah, he's joining the academy team as a 6th. Job well done. He can't even get in the academy team anymore. It's absolutely ended his fucking career, So anyway, right, next talk. Let's move on to the other G2 potential signing, and that is Rops. It's been talked about. I don't think this is... Rops is definitely leaving Mouse Sports. It has to be done. G2 are one of the big teams that have the spending power to do it. Likely it would be to replace Jax, with obviously if this Monasy deal happens, he's replacing Amanek on the AWP. Do we feel that A, that move is viable, and B, that would be a good move for G2?
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, actually, because this will be interesting context for people. One of the reasons also why Carlos, specifically of all the owners, would be the one who'd want to try the Monasy move is because League of Legends is really different to CSGO in that regard. Beyond rare examples like Zebu, Simple, Nico, very, very rare examples, TS is way more tiered, and you really do go from like, I'm a sort of a good tier 2 online player to I can play a tier 1 for 6 months to I'm at Lands, but I'm not that good yet, to I'm getting out the group stage to a year later, maybe I could make top 8 in a minute. Like this, normally I would say to be a top CSGO pro, it takes you about 3 years to power up. You don't just go there immediately. The problem in League of Legends, because A, it's a more simplistic game, B, you have set roles that you've played your whole career, and then C, the game itself gets changed constantly by patches. League of Legends is a game where even though I don't think you can actually be like the absolute best, the equivalent of a Simple, you actually can rock up as a guy who's never been at tier 1 in League of Legends, and in your first split or your first year, you could be considered like a top 3 player at your role out of like, like fucking, I'd say like 300 players or something like that. That can happen. In CSGO, it doesn't happen as much. So unfortunately, I do think essentially Carlos has almost been primed in League of Legends to learn, like you try and get them earlier than necessary, because otherwise they'll be, it's like simple as the buyout will be too much. So he's thinking, I might be getting the next caps or perks or fucking reckless or whatever, but you're not, unfortunately. Like, that's just very rare. Like in CSGO, it ain't like that, mate. So on the angle of Rops, the problem with the Rops angle is this. He is what you think you're getting if you sign the Monasy tag. He is already ready. He's ready to be, if not the best player in the world, a top 5 player in the world. Like I would argue maybe already was at certain points in time last year. Like he is a fantastic player. The problem with this move is entirely outside of the server, in my opinion. It's all the egos and how will he fit in the team and what will the philosophy, whoever the coach of G2, like what will happen in that regard. That's what I want to see, because I think adding him, it's a no-brainer. You do this deal immediately. There's not that many people on your shortlist at this point. Simple and Zebu have all gone. So at this point, Rops is the next name. It's the most obvious player to add. I know people have debated what would happen with him and with Nico. I don't think there's any problem with him and Nico. I think they're both winners and they're people who want to win. Here's the person I think there's a problem with. You can't have your beloved Hunter in this team, in my opinion, if you want both of those players. Because even if Hunter can coexist with Nico, can he coexist with Rops as well? Because I tell you what, my biggest problem in G2, I think this is the number one problem, and this is the one area where I do think Nico interacts with G2 and will actually potentially hold them back. Everyone in that team has just drunk the Kool-Aid on Hunter. They just think he's he's just like Nico 2.0. He isn't. He's a very good player. Or rather, this is my problem. He's either really good or bordering on very good player. I don't think he is like a truly great player. Like when I was watching those games at the major, the difference is Simple had people next to him that were straight bangers. Some games Hunter could do it. He could do it in the earlier games, definitely. In a massive game, he ain't going to just take over the game like Electronic did in the final. He ain't going to do what Bit did and just guarantee you 2 kills all the time. So my biggest problem is they've got to make those 3 players work, because clearly that's going to be the base of the team if they make this squad. So if they can get all those players into roles that are just good, they don't have to be the best for them. I think it's an amazing move, and you definitely do it. I don't care what people think about the role overlap. If you're as good as these guys are, you should be able to make it work. There's not only one spot in the game you play, for fuck's sake, you know.
I know. I mean, to your point on Hunter as well, I sort of agree. I kind of feel like the only series we saw him really step up in and sort of like get to that level where he should be, just behind Nico, that's what's touted, right, was the NIP one. I think actually the player that stepped up the most relative to how they'd performed in the online era was Nexa. Absolutely. And I think pretty much at the major, Nexa secured his future in this lineup, whereas obviously the French guys are going to be out. But, you know, I think you have Nexa as IGL, Hunter, assuming he can get to that next level, which, as you say, I don't think it's a given, but he's not going anywhere. Nico's made it absolutely clear he's solid on the team, you know. And if you do bring in Rops and then maybe this Monasy kid, it's an exciting lineup, it's an interesting lineup. I don't think it's actually guaranteed success. There'll be a lot of tinkering that has to happen. Also, the coaching equation that's there. Who's going to be the coach? X has just tweeted out while we were live saying, you know, the future looks interesting. I mean, you know, maybe X-Taz goes to G2.
Basically, his version of, like, expect the unexpected. Why is everyone such a clown in the scene? Like, that's not even how you hint. At least put, like, a little clue in or something, you know? Just that may as well just be a tweet like, might be something good happen soon. Goodbye. It's like,
bye.
Great. Yeah, great. Yeah. That's it. Oh, cool. See you then. Announcement of an announcement. Like, it's just garbage, isn't it?
I mean, I think that is right, isn't it? Emmy might be the court. I don't understand.
That was implied, I heard. Listen, there's another one, by the way. If that is true, then Carlos didn't listen to anything I told him, because that's an obvious nepotistic fucking hire. It's just someone they used to play with years ago in the scene. And there's another angle I have that's an issue overall with that squad. I'll even tell you straight up, guys, because I'm only going to tell you my side of it. I'll tell you what I literally told Carlos is what my approach would be if I was the general manager of G2. I said, here's how I would solve the Nexa Hunter problem in a second for you. Is I would go to Nico and I would take him aside and I would say, Nico, I think you're good enough that you could be the best player in the world and we could win everything we want together. And I'm the owner that can do it for you, mate. I can give you the players you need. I've got all the money. But here's the thing. I don't fuck around. I have to know that we can win. So here's the question I ask you. Can Nexa and or Hunter, can we win the major? Can we win everything if they're in the team? Because what you do then, and this is the key point I told him, is you then make him part of the equation of building the next squad. He can't then do what he did with FaZe Clan, which I hate, by the way, where at the end of it all, even when you clearly did have influence, people clearly did do things for your benefit, and sometimes even to just not have to crack a few eggshells while they were walking carefully around you. You can't then at the end go, well, I never asked for any of this. I was just chilling playing the game. No, if you're my superstar player, I want you to be invested. So in that scenario, if he says, yes, I think we can win with Nexa and Hunter, and then we don't win, I can go back to him in 6 months and go, what the fuck was that, bro? So you just do that for your friends. Like, that's the point. I actually think, by the way, that's one of the only ways you could get through to Nico, because I do believe on the inside, like, especially after that major, dude, I guarantee he is burning with desire to win the major. He was that close, even with a team that had no business winning it. So in this moment, like, I think if you do that talk right, I don't know that he takes both of them. I think he maybe picks one, he picks the other, whatever he does, but I think you might actually get him in the right frame of mind. Because if instead it's just about what people tend to do, like, you notice the way the roster moves in teams like Team Liquid, Evil Geniuses, the way it works in those teams is never, what do we need to be number one? It's no, who's the worst at the moment and who do we kick to excuse our failures? That's a totally different way of recruiting and building a team. So in my opinion, if you do G2 now, it has to be to go to the top. It can't be to be the 5th best team. Yeah. That ain't good enough.
No, well, I'll be real with you, man. Like, obviously, caught Nico after the event, you know, and wanted to sort of just offer some sort of words of condolences, because not only is it like unbelievably tough to lose in that circumstances, even somebody is like with Nico's ego, which is very robust. When you feel that you did it, because there's that one moment, that one play where, you know, you miss a shot or something doesn't quite go according to I'll tell you, like, he's probably matured a little bit. Also, everyone around G2's all telling me that, like, Nico's been not like his old self, and he's been really, you know, supportive of all the other players and stuff like this. And I can believe it. I don't think anyone's got any reason to lie about that particular issue. So, Yeah, I think he's ready for that. I think he understands now that greatness is never given, right? It's something you've got to go out and seize. And I think that's why he is sort of driving these roster changes. And he's got a great owner in Carlos who's going to support him in getting a team together that he wants. Now, listen, if it is the Rops and Monasy pickup, it's going to be interesting. I'm skeptical that can beat Navi. But at least Carlos will have been as good as his word and gotten the players. So if that's what Nico wants, and that's what Nico gets. Don't know about this Emmy thing at coach, so that just feels like bullshit to me. Anyway, let's talk about Astralis. Speaking of bullshit, I'm gonna give you some classic host to analyst layups in this segment because I know exactly what you want to say. So let's talk about Astralis. Obviously, during the major, they announced that they had gone out and got their guys, which were Config in a deal that supposedly was verbally agreed upon like fucking 6 months ago or even further back, prior to him breaking his wrist, and Blame F, obviously, from the now sort of defunct and broke down Complexity lineup. So their lineup will now be Glaive, Config, Lucky, Blame F, Zipnix. Now, I'm going to be real. I don't think this is going to live up to the Astralis legacy in any way, shape, or form. I think Config is probably the only Danish player that can rise up to the level of the squads they've had in the past. I really rate Config. I think Blame F, without the burdens and the pressures of in-game leadership, he's great in the lurker role. But honestly, I think Zipnix is a bit washed, and the fact you've given him the bag is fucking crazy. Lucky isn't ready to be a tier 1 take over the game AWP yet. Glaive's obviously an IGL who's, again, just started his family and been in and out of the team. And obviously, Bubsky, they're offering around to squads. He's got no future in Astralis, even though Lucky had a bit of a stinker at the major. I don't think this Astralis is ever going to trouble any of the top 5. I think they're massively behind Heroic in terms of overall ability. I'm going to put them behind NIP as well. So yeah, I'm not blown away by this lineup.
No, here's a perfect opportunity to use what I just explained about the whole like vitality angle of it doesn't technically matter if Apex is the right IGL, doesn't technically matter if Pursuit is the right player, because as long as you believe in the rest of the core, you just make the one change and it's worth it, right? That's like, if something breaks down in your Ferrari, you don't throw the whole Ferrari away, you go just fix that one part and I've got my Ferrari again. The problem in this scenario is this, Richard, I don't believe it's the right pieces to begin with. Like, let's go through the team they've got. So they've got Glaive and Zipnix. Good news is they're some of the best players of all time at their role. Bad news is, as far as we can tell, based on when they signed and who they signed agreeing to play with, they only did it for the money and the job security. They didn't do it because they thought this was going to be the best team, which, by the way, is the only good reason as a top player to make a team if you want to be a champion again. That has to be the one clear goal above all other things. Sounds to me like they were just willing to work with whatever situation they're in for the most money and the best deal in the world. So they got that, right? So already, I don't know that those two players will be that good. I believe Glaive could be, but even then, he's been someone, fans don't know this because they don't know Glaive. They only know the Astralis Glaive. This is a guy who can have wavering motivations. If this team turns out to be like just the 22nd best team, he isn't going to go fucking hard every day in the paint. He's already got his majors. He's got his future set up. And by the way, he won't be blamed. Oh, I know all you like asking if Carrigan's actually good because Mouse is just number 2 in the world. Y'all all give this guy a pass like you did at this last major all the way down the fucking river. He'll be allowed to fail a million times over. Then let's go to Zipnix, shall we? Right? You know this whole thing where people were stupidly replying to my tweet where I said a pretty inarguable analytical point, like obviously Perfecto is better than Zipnix, right? Goes out saying, has anyone got fucking eyes? Everyone's living in like 2 years ago, Richard. They were going like debating it, like, you realise Zipnix hasn't been really good for years at this point in time.
There's absolutely zero debate around
He is easily the most washed Astralis player. Like, it's not even really debatable. That guy hasn't turned up ever since the online era began. Now, part of it is he had his own concerns and he was always finagling deals behind the scenes. But even so, I thought he was ass at the major. This guy never did anything. He was. I mean, two foundational pieces, for fuck's sake.
I'll just give this over to Sam. You can bring up the graph, his performance graph.
But it's going to be terrible.
Mate, he's performing at the all-time lowest point in his career. It's like statistically, it's not. Yes. Statistically, it's not even arguable. This is a guy, by the way, that looked out of sorts and I mean, first of all, he got abused in the Copenhagen Flames game. He got wrecked by Entropic. I mean, you know, like, listen, I know he's never the guy to put up numbers, but the whole thing around Zipnix is he was a good fundamental player. He locks down a site. He buys time. He's a clutch god. He thinks about... None of that's true anymore. None of that's true anymore. He might still have the occasional good clutch in him because I don't think you ever really lose that mechanism. No. But at the end of the day, like, his aim is off. He's definitely coming to the end of his career. And I think that's reflected, you know, you sign a 4 or 5 year fucking contract for mega money. You know, I'm like you. I think he's checked all the way out. I think if he had ambition, it would have been him and not Dupree, which was the original trilogy that they were doing. That Zonic and Magisk and Zipnix were meant to be the 3 you had to buy. Clearly, Zipnix just wanted the bag because he didn't go with them to Vitality Island and let's play with Zewu and try and make our own version of a super team. He stayed in old, comfortable, reliable Astralis, where he knows Glave's going to give him all of the comfort picks over the new guys and sort of artificially pad his stats. Nah, like this Astralis lineup for me, it's not as ambitious as it appears. Like, by the way, Blame F was always going to get picked up. He was in free agency, essentially. This isn't representative of Astralis going out and getting the best guys. It's just a natural fit. It's just one of those moves that happen. It's not like a blockbuster roster move. The Config one was exciting. It was always going to happen. And by the way, we don't even know if Config's going to recover from what could be a career-ending injury. Like, as a tier 1...
People are just assuming it's Config stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
We have no idea.
You have no idea. And I'll tell you what, Astralis have no idea as well. Right? So the idea that Config is going to just carry on his star player status, he was one of the best players in the world this year, no doubt, after a broken wrist where he's had to have metal pins put in it to help it heal. I'm not vibing with that, dudes. I'm not vibing with that. I think it's going to take him a while. And even then, it's a wing and a prayer. So that said, here's the layup for you, Duncan. It's a coming. They replaced Sonic as coach as well, obviously, and they did it with Ave, you know, a legendary name, much like Sonic, from you know, the good old days of 1.6. But wait, didn't something?
But it's weird. If people don't get it, you know, when we were talking about that rumor, which as far as I know was credible, that Hunden would join Astralis. Basically, you're all going to think, well, they didn't sign him or did this, and that was just all speculation. No, they've done the same thing, boys. They've signed a coach who was banned for using the coach exploit. Now, remember, Nicola Nyholm did that tweet where he called, personally, he tagged them all of the heroic players, and said that he wanted them to come to his office and explain to him, like, you know, what had gone on with the coaching. His org has now hired someone who literally was banned for using exactly the same bug.
Crazy. It's almost as if Nicola Nyholm has no principles whatsoever and will only do what's good for business. Personally, I didn't see that one coming, mate. I'm shocked. I am shocked and stunned by that. Here's the thing. I'm also just going to say this. I think this is cheeks as well. Cheeks being the word of this podcast. Fucking think this is a cheeks pick. You don't replace the greatest of all time with the motherfucker that coached North. One of the most underwhelming tier 1 teams and one of the most expensive teams to ever flop in CSGO history. What's Ave done? What's Ave done as a coach to make you think he should even be allowed to talk to Glaive? Fuck this. It's just the little Danish incestuous pool. That's all that is. You talk about old boys clubs, you talk about incestuous hires. This is an egregious example.
The problem with this entire structured team is, as I was pointing out there, every single one of the names falls apart when you put any scrutiny on it. So, as you said, Config, no one even knows if it's Config. And by the way, that's the Config that got himself back into form. Even forget the injury. Just consider how much time he has now had out of playing Tier 1 CS. That's like resetting yourself completely for, 3-6 months or something. Like, the ring rust alone is going to make it so you won't be good instantly. And then on the Blame F1, he spent his whole career calling around himself as an IGL. It's basically implied from the players that played with him. So, spoiler, he's probably not going to get the same numbers because he can't call around himself. So he could still be a very good player, but we have no idea what he's like if he's not the IGL. And then the last guy is Lockie, right? And I'm just going to say it right now. I never heard a fucking word about this guy when he was on Tricked. Everyone now pretends like he was the next up and coming. He isn't. That's an Astralis storyline. Like, his stats look good if you go look when he's playing in tier 2 and tier 3. But this guy wasn't even the guy touted as like, you got to watch out for this guy. They just artificially boosted this guy into the team because what else was fucking going on in his career? They don't want to make big signings. As Richard pointed out, listen, they're giving people great contracts. They're not paying motherfucking buyouts in Astralis, though. The last time they paid a buyout was that stupid ass one for Bobski, which the joke is it was apparently just set in the contract way too low, so it was worth paying that buyout, especially because they obviously, by the way, notice we didn't even mention that motherfucker's name because he was only ever in Astralis to be flipped. I tried to explain this to this fucking moron last year. He probably still doesn't get it. Like, now he's trying to like soften the blow by memeing on himself, guys. Like, again, this is some Daps level shit, mate. Like, you're just part of the cuckoldry at this point in time. Like, get us backbone. Like, by the way, at this point in time, so you know they're going to sell you anyway, at least get a fucking spine and sort of get like mildly annoyed at them or something, or start to feel like privately you get it, that like you were used essentially, because he's obviously never going to play in this team. And I'll just say this about the Lucky angle. Like, unlike people like Monasy and some of the others, like, I don't even know where the trajectory is supposed to be for this guy. Like, did I miss something? Why are people just telling me, like, it's guaranteed he's going to be an amazing player? No, it's far from it. He plays the hardest role in Counterstrike to be the best at. Fucking primary AWPer on a top 10 team that goes to lands. Some people never make it through that gate. By the way, everyone now will laugh like he's a meme, right? At Draken, right? You even made that joke about him on the major.
Yeah, I did.
Look, that period when Draken, before he joined NIP, he was better than Lockie's ever been in his career. He was a LAN AWPer who was actually pretty good. He just hadn't had the jump up, and he never made it through the jump up, obviously, on LAN. He was always just a bit suspect, right? So, like, there are so many names I can point out on the revolving door of people who wanted or thought they could be a tier 1 AWPer. So much Poison. Who the fuck's trying to get Poison now? Poison was better than Lockie's ever been his whole career. The point I'm making is, this isn't just a role you just slot into and you can be all right. You can't be like Grim was on Team Liquid. You have to be one of the best in the world. So I don't think this guy even makes it. Here's my prediction. If Lockie stays in this version of Astralis without some major roster move, in 1 year from now, they're not even a top 10 team in the world. There's no world, I think, where they're keeping this guy.
They're ranked 19 right now.
He's going to be gone. He's going to be gone, I'm telling you. Or they're just going to be an underwhelming team. Because I agree. Listen, I get why this one's fooled so many people. If you don't look at all the like secondary and tertiary factors we're bringing up, it looks like pretty good on paper. Actually, like, hey, you sort of like rejigged the team. You got some big names in there. You didn't though, really. And in fact, the two players he got in, Config and AMF, realistically didn't have anywhere else to go right now. They just sort of like, to them, it really is like, this is how you know that it isn't legit, Richard. Because even their interviews are sort of like, oh, I've always wanted to play for Astralis. Wrong answer. The first answer is we can be the best team in the world.
Yep.
That's what you come out the gates with. If I'm joining Vitality, by the way, I don't waste my time lying. Like, oh, I always wanted to play with Z. I just say I think we can be number one. That's how we beat Navi. That's how you start the conversation. So I don't even get the vibe that even the good players that join this team join for the right reason. I think they joined because in their mind, it's like, wow, I can't believe this is like the players who joined NIP when it was like Get Right and Forrester transitioning out. Like, I'm going to get to play with Get Right. Yeah, at the end, when it sucks, and then eventually you just get to inherit the team and never live up to that mantle, mate. That's the poison chalice of all time, mate.
Yeah, put it this way, I'll say as well, this is how you know, like, fans, they just latch on to narratives. Think about all the shit Acor's got over at Mouse. Not without reason, right? It's not like something that's been created whole cloth. Yeah, he's been disappointing overall, you've got to say. But I would take Acor over Lucky in a motherfucking heartbeat. And I think if you put Acor on this Astralis lineup in his place, they get, like, probably doubly as good. Lucky is the bottleneck for this entire team. Now, I'll also just add, by the way, you know, like, obviously it's awful. He's 18. It's his first taste of the tier 1, you know, but eventually we're going to get down this road. There's going to be no more excuses. I'll just add as well, I don't think Astralis are going to ride or die with this guy. I don't think they ride or die with players. I mean, look at what they've done to Bubski. That's how they treat players, like cattle, essentially. Bubski was brought in at a time when the players had the organisation over a barrel for contract negotiations. He was essentially a scab. That's what they did. They brought him and Yugi in to be scabs. Fuck all that 10-man roster lineup nonsense, that 7 roster lineup. They literally brought them in so they would have leverage over the players. Only reason they were there, I don't care how fucking deranged you are and how much you love Astralis, Bubski Mate, that guy, at the time he joined Astralis, he could have joined a number of teams. Now, with the Copenhagen Flames roster having emerged, where does he fit in? You know, where does he go? So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not vibing with these Astralis moves. I agree with you. I think they're going to really struggle to even get back in the top 10. And we're going to find out soon because guess what? We've got the grudge match coming around again. They're going to take on NIP in the Blast Fall finals. So, you know, that's going to be interesting. And we'll talk about NIP.
There's a tweet I'm trying to just find. I'm almost there. But basically, during the major, I want to like check I get like the phrasing right on this because I thought it was outrageous when I saw it. Let me see. I'm almost there now. Basically, maybe someone in the chat can like corroborate if I'm wrong or right on this. So I'll keep scrolling and see if I can find it. Basically, during the major, I can't remember if it was. I think it was before the Vitality move was announced. I think as soon as Astralis went out of the major, they made some mad tweet or Instagram post, which basically just openly implied like that's the end for Dupree and Magus.
Yeah.
And implied, and I know in the media they did this in Denmark. They implied in the Danish media that they were like benching them for bad performance, and that's why they weren't continuing on in Astralis. By the way, totally the opposite as far as I know as to what was actually going on. And also in doing so, you are going out your way when you know these players are going to join another team to just cock them like they're leaving anyway, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
In that scenario, if people don't know, every fan's going to do the usual thing they do to us, Richard, where they gaslight us that all of history was different when they don't know. That is not the normal way you do it. The normal way you do it, especially when it's a player you respected and did a lot for your org, is you let them write their ticket. They get to announce the new team. They get to have the surprise. They get to have all the rumours circuit, and then they get to choose when it comes out. When they did like this, again, it just shows you, look at how they have treated the fucking people who played on their team. It's outrageous.
No, mate, by the way, whoever is the Astralis Twitter guy, like, he's got to be next on the chopping block in the fucking heady world of social media management. Their tweets are fucking ass. Like, think about what they did to Bubsky as well. It's like, we're not taking you to the major, and he's, like, obviously disappointed. And they're like, but you'll be back, legend, miss you, legend. Like, mate, you're the one doing it to him. You're the one doing it to him. It's like the prison guard saying, "Oh, you'll be fine. Now I'm gonna beat you with a truncheon, but don't worry, you'll be out soon." Like, what the fuck are you doing? Absolutely unfucking real. And of course, they deleted that tweet. I think they've even deleted the tweet you're referring to, but I did definitely see it. So, like, listen, they don't respect their players. They don't treat them right at all. And like you say, ultimately, they're never gonna just tell the straight dope, which was the players wanted more money because of the way they have to live when they're in Astralis, because of the expectations put on them. Also, as well, and like, you only have to look, whenever a player leaves, like Essetag did to Cloud9, they're always like, when we buy players, we don't want to talk about the money. Money's not important. When they sell, they will go against even what the team they're selling to wants and just leak it. Just leak out the value, like they did with Essetag. And they were like, why? Because they're a fucking publicly traded company and they want to make it look like they're making money. So we sold Essetag, the most expensive player in the world. Absolute bullshit, grade A bullshit, weapons grade bullshit, right? At no point was Essetag the most expensive player in the world, the most expensive buyout in the world. No, nonsense. But this is what they do. It's all they give a fuck about. Astralis went from being the kind of, a player-owned organization. This could be exciting. I wonder what this will usher in, to being one of the ultimate villains. Just absolute garbage. So, but remember that, by the way. If you're an Astralis fan, that isn't moving across the Vitality now, like esports fans have a tendency to do. Just know what you're aligned with.
Yes.
Know what you're aligned with.
Wait, obviously everyone, especially from like the 90s and the 2000s on, everyone's seen enough documentaries to go, you stupid Americans with your Fox News, all the misinformation your press give you. I can just tell you, as someone in esports who has the connections, if you are reading any Nordic press, mainstream press about esports, you are in the most gaslit reality of all time. Like, if you read in the Swedish press, spoiler, that's all NIP shills. If you read in the Danish press, spoiler, that's all Astralis shills. Yeah. And by By the way, what the fuck? I've just realised how crazy this is, because obviously we'll talk about him in a minute, I'm sure, with another roster move. How crazy is it that Essetag is just the fucking off-brand four-stripe Astralis trainer? Because think about it, right? When they were actually in fucking Cloud9, they were like, oh, Henry, who have you got us for the 5th? Is it Zipnik? Is it Cold Zero? I've got you, Essetag. All right. Then in the fucking, obviously, in Complexity, they were like, oh, we're getting Magus, like the Danish CSGO Leaks guy says. Nah, I did get you Essetag, though. Oh, bloody hell, all right. Now Device is like, right, you're getting me Dupree, though, right? I'm getting some help. Yeah, I've got you, Dane. Essetag. Like, fuck. We've got Essetag at home. This is garbage. What is this? This is fucking... Listen, Essetag is a good player. He's none of these players. What is this shit?
No, it is wild. Like, I'm trying to think. Like, I have never seen
label Essetag. It's fucking outrageous, isn't it? I know.
I've never seen a more meteoric rise.
This guy has parlayed like no one in history. Whatever, like 45 maps he played for Astralis, no one has ever taken that and made it more of like an insane. Like this guy's like, you know, I know you don't know crypto much, but one of the main things in crypto apparently is like you don't just own it. You do this thing with these MetaMask things where you like flip it between other people and want it. It's based on like supply and demand basically. It's a way you like just 10x your money all the time. It's like he's done that with his career, hasn't he? He's done the most perfect sort of like fucking bait and switch with everyone over and over again.
Here's what you have to remember, right?
Must be killing the game, whoever it is.
When he joined, right. So first of all, right, because people always forget this part of the story. Remember, him joining Astralis is what tanked the fucking Fun Plus Phoenix deal that led to Cadian doing that famous video where he was naked, well, top off, you know, walking down the street, you know, like the Incredible Hulk, saying that, like, you know, my entire life. Because FPX only wanted to pick up a 5, and Essetag fucked up the whole thing, right? So not only did he do that to get to Astralis, he played 36 maps in the online era, right? And then Mega Money to go to Cloud9, who were building a team whole cloth, did all right there. Then he's out in the wilderness, right? Oh, I'm off to Complexity just as the team died. Remember, by the way, he's getting a signing on fee and fuck knows what else. He's got an agent, right? Did Complexity even happen with him? I don't even know. Did it? Was it even real? It feels like a fucking fever dream after you've, you know, eaten a dodgy kebab. And then I've
got to say it, because here's the thing, it's not even like he's that sick a player that, you know, the eye test just gives it all. This guy must just be, it's like the joke, I remember, who fucking was it? I can't remember the surname of the guy. He's a really good clean stand-up. It's Brian something or other. I can't remember his name. He's a mega stand-up though. He had a joke that was like that, where he was like, how good is the fucking marketing executive from Cranberries? Like, why are they in every drink with every other drink? Like cranberries and apple, cranberries and banana. Like, we got going on there. Like, can we get cranberries involved? Like, that must just be Essetag's fucking agent. Like, how's he getting in all these teams?
His agent's obviously fucking balling out of control. But anyway, you know, he's got a signing on fee all the time, and now he's joined NIP. And by the way, from what I've heard, it's another big money deal.
Of course. Listen, Essetag, son, that's all we do here, mate. Like, fucking, why is he being treated like he was like, God, I've got you another blockbuster deal. Obviously, with my usual signing fee up front, now I get my 25k. Like,
I know, it's wild, isn't it? But anyway, here's what I'm going to say. NIP signing Essetag. I mean, obviously, Linus was out after this major. He's not good enough for this level. And as I said earlier, he's not even gone straight back to the academy team. They've literally put him as a 6th in the academy team, which should really tell you how far off the pace he is and how all of their stuff about the NIP system and developing the next generation of talent, or just again more classic.
You can all just
from an organisation.
It's all that needs to be said, right? If tomorrow Astralis cuts Lockie just like Linus will be cut now, who signs these players? Nobody is the answer. Essentially nobody, right? Yeah, it shows that it's not real. It's just fake, isn't it?
Yeah, but yeah, price tag as well is the meme.
That was a classic one. That is good, actually. That was a good one.
No, but it's fucking legit now. Like, it is wild. But anyway, I'm gonna just say this, like, this is an upgrade for NIP. It was the right cut to make.
Great.
It's getting them closer to that, you know, potential status. I still believe, like, Rez let me down so much at the motherfucking major, like, but I still believe in this lineup. And now I know everyone's immediately going to turn their attention to Plopsky. Let's wait and see. Let's just wait and see, because you do need some glue. But if Essetag plays like he was playing in Cloud9, NIP are going to be competitive. They might trouble those other two teams I'm talking about in that top 3 mix.
I mean, listen, mate, if Rez keeps it up like this, he'll be the fucking glue, like all fucking, whatever that guy from Animal Farm was called, Style. What was his name?
I can't even remember.
The fucking horse. I can't remember his name. Bouncer or
Mr.
something on it. Something sick like that. Anyway, basically, no, the problem I have with this team is there's still one piece away, and the obvious piece is a real IGL. If you could add a real IGL to this team, like, by the way, imagine if it had been Glaive going to this team or something like that. Would be a very interesting move. Because the thing is,
just to feed into this.
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, because obviously you're talking about like the T sides, which were garbage, right? So yeah, I mean, I still like Hampus as an IGL, but I mean, the T sides speak for themselves. But then again, I think if you've got to try and use players like Linus and Plopsky to get shit done on the T side, I think you're in for a tough time. But anyway, continue.
I mean, all I'm going to say is if you're willing to give up 2 of your maps that you're calling to someone who's never played at Tier 1, I don't believe you're a real IGL. Real IGLs don't give up being the IGL. As soon as you say, like Fallen did, all right, Stewie, you can do it, that just means you didn't believe in yourself anyway, mate. Think with it, I've always said this, I said it to Happy years ago. IGLs have their own kind of ego, like star players do. The star player ego is I'm the best, so give me everything. The IGL's ego is I know the best, so I get to decide everything. As soon as you don't believe that, you're basically done. Your days are numbered. It's why I actually don't really believe in the whole Nitro coming back thing. It seemed to me like he gave that shit up way too easily and let himself be kicked off the team, basically. Again, a bit of a Daps vibe there. So no, the problem I have with this team is I think the Linus was so bad and such a pointless player in the team that Essetag, no matter what level he plays at, is an upgrade and it's worth the trade. It's actually a good trade. I also do think generally, as long as he's not in a star role, he's a pretty good player. Actually, he just rounds out a team well. But I still think if you want to be a true top 3, top 2 team in the world and challenge Navi, you need the real IGL. That's the piece they need. Or you need the others to all go crazy. If Device goes like one of the best in the world again and Rez gets good, yeah, maybe Firepower alone can do it. So I think the team's interesting, but they haven't quite captured my attention as like a challenger for the top yet.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I'm maybe huffing that hopium, but I thought they were going to do better at the major than they did, but that was really contingent. Like, when I saw the ZTR lineup, I was like, yeah, all right, I can get on board with this. And then when they brought in Linus, I mean, I was just never a fan. It's, I know you got to give these kids time, but you're not at a major. That's not the place. Like, the major, you take the team that is the final project and you give it your best shot. Linus should never have competed at it. He just wasn't ready, and it was very obvious. So, Essetag joining NIP, I think they'll be good, but yeah, I'm tempering my expectations now. I realised during the major, I said they were good value for being the number 1 team in the world when they got that rank. That was utter bullshit.
Number two, but yeah.
Is that what I said?
You just said number 1, but number 2.
No, they did, didn't they? Didn't they hit number 1 for like a week or something?
No, maybe not. It'll be number 2. I believe before the major, they were number 2.
Well, even that sort of bullshit. I was completely wrong, and that's fine. But that's hopium. It's a powerful and potent drug.
It's the worst.
Yeah, I believe it. So there you go. I think that's everything. We don't need to spend too much time on the other stuff. We can just pick that up in our regular programming. Obviously, things we didn't talk about. Spirit are looking to rebuild after cutting Mir and Chopper. The Fun Plus Phoenix team with Steacord and company, they're all up for grabs. Complexity, all of their players are also out there. I mean, free agency, by the way, looks absolutely fucking insane when you think there's like Cold Zero is technically a free agent. There's MSL still out there, JW's out there, Rush is out there, Obo's out there, Mihu's out there, Flamey's out there. And obviously some good coaches to pick up as well. So, I think we'll probably have another Rostermania happening probably by next week. So there you go. But that does lead us on to viewer questions. So obviously, if you donate to the Patreon, you pay $50 or more, you get to ask us a question about anything. We do our best to answer it. So starting out the gate, Jerky's Minion, not really a question, but more of an offer. If Harry is going to do some rap, that's obviously Harry, the commentator, he might as well make one about BTN segments, and I will pay $250 to commission this. Harry, do you have the stones? Or don't you? I'll put my money where my mouth is. Will you? So there you go.
If I had to guess, by the way, he'd probably do it for free. I don't think he's doing that thing that they all do in esports where they go, "Hey guys, would you like it if I made a video about strats on Nuke?" Like, doesn't matter whether they do or not. Enough fans are going to go, "Yes, yes, yes, Queen," and then you're just going to make the video you're going to make anyway. So I'm pretty sure he'd do it anyway. Like, if you've heard that mental rap he made about Richard, listen, I like Harry, but like, you must have been cringing your tits off when you listen to that because the tone he goes with, it's like you can't pull off that like swagger rapper, mate. That ain't you. So know.
Yeah.
And listen, he wasn't DDK levels of bad because I genuinely did.
I was gonna say.
When I heard DDK rap, I so badly wanted the actual premise of like Eternal Sunshine from Spotless Mind to be real, so I could pay to have that memory deleted from my brain. Along, by the way, with a bunch of other things like certain images that we brought up from the old school within the green room that you don't need to know about, fans.
Yeah. As if you remembered he had a ring on his finger. That's still so mental to me.
That's actually properly blown your mind, hasn't it? I know.
You went, no, that's not accurate, actually, because he has a ring on his face. I was like, fucking hell, how have you... What a mad pull that is. Like, what a mad pull that is.
It was mental, I know.
Anyway.
Harry isn't as bad as DDK, but here's the thing. It also ain't great. It ain't a great look. I'm just saying right now.
What he needs is... Will
we get wrecked if we play a part of it on this episode so people can see what I'm talking about? Yeah, no, the Harry one. Harry did one about Richard like a few months ago.
I mean,
surely Harry's not going to copyright strike us. That'll be a dark day when that happens, Richard. Surely this is good.
We already put it in. We put it on. Yeah, we already put it in one of the shows.
No, that was VDK. I don't think we did Harry.
No, we did. It's just what it was.
Not one of my shows, right? Okay,
not one we did together. So it's up on my YouTube channel. If people want to listen to it. But I'll just say this: I want to listen. I want to do an album.
I take the whole thing. And Richard Lewis, the man who's going to come in, and like, give me a place. Dude, he's almost on some like fucking like John Mann thing. And there's a guy who's going to come in and go see an event and choke and play it. Like, it's like.
I want to record an album with Harry. That's no joke. That's like one of my bucket
Listen,
list.
obviously get Red Eye in there for a guest spot on one track at least, you know.
Mate, be welcome of the work at the moment, I'm sure. So yeah, we'll do it. We'll drop the ultimate straight fire esports album. Anyway, thanks for that, Jerky. I'm sure Harry will reply when he gets around to watching this. When Sam puts it out in 20 days or whatever.
Yeah, you know, the movie 28 Days Later was actually a documentary about Sam's workflow on
I put out 2 in 3 days this week.
You did actually, you did
and I did 3 other VODs that haven't got out yet. I've been grafting.
You're just getting blamed for the old days now, it's true.
Yeah, no, it's true. Literally, by the way, there are like 3 ready-to-go Richard Lewis shows. So he's been straight. He's earning his money at the moment. Good Sam. Love being law. Right, Chingu. What's the best shit-talking line you've ever heard in sports or esports? Well, sports will definitely win.
Well, first of all, I'm just thinking of all the shit Mike Tyson said in his career. We can't even repeat some of it here, but some of that was fucking fire. Like, listen, if you were going to be someone who had no consequences, just go and look up some of the things Mike Tyson said, specifically at press conferences. Yeah. There was a specific press conference that, listen, I think it's still straight fire. The shit he said in that one wasn't real, wasn't it? It was about the nature of love. It was a sort of an existential pondering on love.
It was too much. I mean, listen, what people probably don't realize is like all the Muhammad Ali stuff. He actually had a guy that sort of helped him come up with that used to be in his entourage. A guy called Drew Bundini Brown. Played Bumpy in the original Shaft movie. And so all those like awesome fucking rhymes, like one of the lines, I'm so mean, I make medicine sick. Stuff like that is fucking straight fire. Like, so you have to go to the classics. I'm trying to think. There's like, because obviously all the Zoomers are going to be like, but what about Conor McGregor? No, I don't think throwing whiskey in a Muslim's face is that cool, actually. I think he's a massive...
Even though Conor McGregor had a couple of good lines, even just in MMA, dude, Chael Sonnen is way better than Conor McGregor.
I mean, mate, I always love Chael Sonnen on the mic, like, you know...
shit.
Yeah. There's a couple of examples for you. Hope that answers your question. Orky...
And here's the thing, though, unrelated though, just as a video, I did find it incredibly compelling to watch Conor McGregor just punch an old man in his face for essentially no good reason.
Do you want a drink, sir? You want to try my fucking whiskey, right? You want to try my fucking whiskey? No, you're all right, mate. You fucking mad cunt, you're like, mate.
And I'll never get over it.
That's Irish at that point.
That's the moment when I stopped betting on Conor McGregor. Because old man just took that entire ball. And that was the left. Mate, that was the one he knocked out.
I know. The 60-year-old man didn't even fight him and give him a contract, Dana, for fuck's sake.
I know. By the way, that's how pathetic Conor McGregor's career is. He actually would do a fight that was with that old man if he could build up the media. You know, like for that McKibbe fight, they just kept using that egregious footage just over and over. They'd use the same footage, like, oh, look, what did you think when he got your jaw? I don't know, to be fair. It'd be outrageous, wouldn't it?
I said was I didn't want to drink his whiskey, so it were mad offensive Irish stereotypes, but it's okay, we can get away with that. So anyway, Oki asks, we all know drama in the workplace can be tough to deal with and put everyone in a strange spot, especially when it's done so publicly. So
that's where this is going. I can't imagine where this could be going, Richard.
It's good. It's good because he goes, so that being said, what's your favourite whiskey? There you go. He's done us a solid.
Obviously, you don't want to get my fucking jaw lightly tapped by a washed up UFC fighter, do I? To be fair. To be sure, rather. Yes.
Propatov's garbage. Like, it's grotesque. It's like it's not even as good as Jameson.
Didn't you say you bought on some past episodes some giant bottle of whiskey or something outrageous?
It's over my shoulder. Look at that.
Isn't that supposed to be one of the best whiskies in the world or something?
Nah, and fuck no, I was just an idiot.
Okay.
I'd heard it was good, and then I saw it was mega expensive, and I went, fucking hell, it must be good. But it was mega expensive because it was a 4.5 fucking litre bottle, not because that's the price point of the whiskey. I mean, look, the problem is with whiskey, there's like, you can always just say like, oh, it's this one, and it's like mad and it's crazy and it's expensive. Listen, and then there's a tendency everyone gets like hung up on age signatures. Me, I've just hit a point now where it's like, like everyone goes through the noob trap when it comes to whiskeys where, if it's expensive, it must be good, and that's how you end up drinking, Zeus, Johnny Walker Blue, and only the finest result. It's garbage, right? But, you hit a point where you sort of concentrate on what tastes nice and what's interesting. And I've said this many times on the show, if you want to get yourself some good, nice medium price point whiskey that doesn't even sort of flood the zone with the bullshit about age signatures and all that, Compass Box makes some absolute fucking bangers. They're a company that make whiskey. They do a Madeira cask one called the Spaniard. That's a banger. I regularly order that. I regularly pick up 6 bottles of that. They do one called Hedonism. That's a lovely vanilla, very sweet on the palate. That's about twice the price of the Spaniard. It's really good for some reason. It's got a bell in the underside of the bottle, so it rings every time you pour it. Don't know why that's there. They do Peat Monster as well, which is a classic. It's a great entry into peated whiskies. It's not too overpowering. But like, their catalogue is straight fire for just good, enjoyable whiskies. The other one I had recently, I had a Glenfiddich, I think it was. And it was Glenfiddich, A Story of Cake. That's the name of the whiskey. And the premise is that it's like essentially a birthday cake tasting whiskey. It's fucking great. It was a banger. I had to track it down.
There's a subtitle to FNX's biopic. FNX, The Story of Cake.
Okay. Yeah, indeed. So, there you go. There's basically, don't get hung up on the years. Get your palate trained. Get some enjoyable drops, especially with Christmas around the corner. And I can't, and I'm not sponsored by them or anything, just a fan, but Compass Box is a great place to start. Anyway, Watch Doge. I've always been intrigued by dystopian literature. What
a fucking mental opener to a question.
Yeah, you're right. No, but here's the thing. I'm just thinking of that fucking clip. Do you believe in ghost stories? Because you're in one. Do you believe in dystopias? You are fucking in one. Yeah, believe it. So what is your favourite? What do you think is the most prescient dystopian novel? Is it 1984, Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, or The Flying DJ's? Oh, it's a joke one. The Flying DJ's eventual autobiography about his journey through esports. Well, listen, I'll answer this seriously. 1984 gets referenced all the time, and it's a bugbear to me because it's referenced specifically by motherfuckers that have never read it all the time. Keep in mind, by the way, Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election said, I think 1984 tells us that actually we should, put competent people in charge and we should trust our politicians. I'm like, fucking hell. And people were going, oh, yeah. Yes, Queen. Fuck this. So 1984 is particularly prescient because of the language aspect to it. And if you watch what's happening in the US media and the news and how terms quickly become either, hate speech or terms get memory holed entirely, and language evolves at a much more rapid pace at the behest of the ruling class these days. you know, you all of that stuff by Orwell was straight on. Fahrenheit 451. I always thought that was it's a good book. I really like Bradbury. I don't think it's Bradbury's best book. You know, might be an unpopular thing to say. You know, but he's a fantastic writer. All of his short, so many, you know, the tattooed man, all of that. Sorry, the illustrated man, about the guy with all the tattoos, and each tattoo's a different story. That's like way more playful and whimsical, and tells better stories. But anyway, the aspect of Fahrenheit 451, I don't think it's a particular blockbuster dystopian novel, just in the sense that we burn the books now. Yeah, of course. Like, you know, it's prescient in the sense, I suppose, when he was writing it, maybe widespread media censorship wasn't a thing, but it had already been done. It had already been done in dictatorships and, you know, despot ruled countries up to that point. Basically, Orwell was prescient in the sense his writing went on to become true. Bradbury was referencing things that had already happened, taken to a much more radical extreme. The one that everyone always leaves out is Brave New World. Brave New World has to be the best dystopian book for me, because Brave New World essentially puts you in a I mean, Huxley's a very underrated writer, in my opinion. But Brave New World essentially puts you in a place where we welcome the dystopia. We do it to ourselves. The people welcome the dystopian measures. That, to me, is the most prescient thing of all, because you think about our society where it is now, and the things that we acquiesce to, the things that we allow to happen to us, the way we are willingly gaslit into believing shit that on some level we must know isn't true. And all of the cognitive dissonance that just comes from existing in a digital space. Huxley nailed all of that if you read that book. So, yeah, for me, Brave New World is the most prescient dystopian novel out of the big three.
The problem I have with those is I agree with the initial premise of the question. I just don't think actually in reality that's the case. Because here's the issue. I think what actually George Orwell was trying to do was he was trying to imagine, because this was actually a prominent thought at the time. Like at the time it was thought in the same way as every country went through monarchy and then went to like some sort of like a, you know, like a parliamentary government type scenario. It was actually thought that eventually all the major countries, including the UK and USA, will one day have fascism. They will have like a populist rise, and they will have their own Mussolini, Hitler, Stalin type figure who was just in charge of everything. Or he was also looking obviously like the Soviet Union. Obviously he was a left-wing guy, right? And you just imagine what would that look like if it was in British bureaucracy, and it has like a very British vibe to it, you know. It's almost like the Terry Gilliam movies, has that sort of sinister undertone, but still in like a very pedestrian British way, right? That was mega prescient, the way he tried to like extrapolate what the Britain would be like, right? I also think the Ray Bradbury one, I agree, it's not as profound. I would just say that didn't even really turn out to be true. I would say the most sinister censorship of books actually comes from culture. Like, I think the thing where, if people aren't aware, if you own Kindle versions of certain books, good luck, you're not going to have that book soon, because Amazon can literally delete it off your Kindle when they then update the book, which now has a character taken out of it that's now verboten or cancelled, or the author's forced to change it, and the book on your actual Kindle will change. It won't exist anymore. So I'd suggest you buy hard copies of any books that you're in, even vaguely incendiary, that you're into. Now, on the Brave New World angle, I'll just say this. The reason why I don't give it full credit, even though I would agree, it's definitely nailed the angle that, one, the way you actually hide information is you just flood the space with loads of low-key information, like entertainment, that people wouldn't even think to crack open a book or go and read up some shit on the government, because why would you? The next feelies on the next nice TV show or whatever. And the whole pharmacopoeia angle, where you understood that like basically drugs would literally be the opiate of the masses. You would use it to sedate people and calm them down, and even the idea that like if you act out in any way, that's because you haven't been properly medicated. That's all brilliant. My only angle is this, is if you ever go and look basically into who Aldous Huxley was, he wasn't being prescient, guys. He was just telling you literally what him and some of his intellectual friends wanted to do to the world, and their plans actually did come true. So spoiler, he was sort of like in on a few things that we weren't. Like he was an incredibly high class society, if people don't know, contrasted with George Orwell, for example. So I agree on the characterization of the book. So I would personally say, like, I think all of them have their own qualities. I actually think the most underrated sort of future that was envisioned is basically the future of the movie Blade Runner. To me, like, if you look, because I already knew from going to countries like Korea that model is a very appealing model to certain places. The idea of sort of like almost like the old dynastic families just rule over things and they just become the companies. That's like that vibes with me way more now, because if people don't know, I expect America to become like Blade Runner in the next 10 to 15 years. It will be more like the rich will live in these sort of areas areas where they'll just be out of reach of you. You won't even see them, and you'll live in some sort of shitty Amazon hovel where basically you work some dog shit job and you have your credits and you use it at the store. And you're within the bottom layer of Blade Runner, and they're up here on the sort of like Elysium level, if I can mix metaphors. So yeah, I think I always thought that was a brilliant angle, because you see how much of that, like, just the atmosphere and the vibe of that feels like it's coming true. And I always thought that was a mega dystopian angle.
Yeah, and another one that doesn't get a lot of shine. He's another forgotten, just unbelievably talented writer. Is Ballard, obviously. JG
Oh, of course.
I love all his stuff. I got a ton of his stuff back there.
It's mega well if you think about the current climate. 10, 15
high rise.
Yes.
It's so on the money. It is so on the money. Now there is a film adaptation of it that I've seen, which, you know, it's okay. But seriously, read the book High Rise. It's like, actually, you know, he wrote that, I want to say in the 60s. You know, I'm not too sure of the year he wrote it. I might be wrong. But anyway, basically all of it just nailed on, you know, the way we've separated ourselves into strata, the way we fuck over each other. It's another absolute banger. So 75 was it apparently. Okay. But yeah, it's perfect. That to me, if you're especially as a British person, that resonates really strongly. Right, Reykjavik on Steam. Now that CS has had a banger of an event that broke viewer numbers, even after a year and a half of online events and oversaturation, what is the Overwatch League's excuse? You want to take point on that one?
They haven't really got one, have they? Like, the joke of the Overwatch League is, this is why, I'll give you a very quick example, because I've told it on this show before in the past. You know, I always say that the area that I think Lerp is fucked up with, when he was telling me all that stuff that was either way totally accurate about how Elon Musk was basically like a fraud and he isn't what he presents himself as, is what Lerp has ignored, though, is it's like everyone else is in on the game, mate. They're all on his side. They want him to succeed, and he's got government money flowing in. So, like, at that point, it doesn't matter how right you are. If everyone else just agrees, like, the Emperor does have clothes on, Lerpers, what are you talking about? You actually can't sort of beat that. So my problem is this, right? Basically, the Overwatch League has already failed. It failed years ago, and now is its ultimate failure, where it cannot ideologically justify any of the reasons for its creation. But because it was never about that, and it was always about a high-level Ponzi scheme to get endemic and non-endemic people to invest massive amounts of money, it will be continued to be propped up. They will now take the corpse of the Overwatch League, and in some sort of fucked up but not fun version of Reanimator, they will bring it back to life one more time for Overwatch 2, and they will even lie and spin every story of what Overwatch 1 was want to be and spin it into Overwatch 2, and they'll even imply, by the way, guys, this was always the plan, and that they never thought, they'll even tell you barefaced lies in a year or two, they never thought the first few years they would hit viewership records. That was always down the line, and it was about steady, it was never, by the way, it was supposed to succeed from day one.
Yeah, I mean, totally on point. And yeah, I mean, look, again, I was talking a little bit about this with Sean the other day, because, you know, obviously the expectation is that Valorant will do a franchise league, and I jokingly said, you know, that's the model a lot of these owners would prefer. It's kind of weird that it's like, I mean, for me, the Overwatch League's absolute repugnant failure would make me as an owner a bit more like skeptical about the franchise concept in esports, frankly, because they will never, and I mean never, the money they have lost on having an Overwatch, you will never make it back. If Overwatch became the biggest esport tomorrow, which it cannot do, but if it did, it would take maybe never, like still maybe never, maybe 10 years to even, you know, think about breaking even. You paid 20 or in some cases 30 million.
Yeah, the second round.
Yeah, you know, for a slot in a league that people don't watch. And like put it this way, it's interesting, isn't it, as well, because it's not just about the viewership, guys. Actually, Overwatch viewership last season was up. It was touching like, you know, 100,000 on YouTube, right? And when you think about LEC and LCS numbers, that's 120,000, and people are going, oh, God, like the viewership's massively down. Yet nobody has ever talked about how League of Legends isn't good to have, or, you know, they're hemorrhaging cash. No, Riot's done a bang-up job of creating a sort of ecosystem that actually works, and, of course, didn't charge you 20 or 30 million for a slot. It was 10, and the orgs that were guaranteed those slots were orgs that could definitely afford that and probably do see a return. Also, as well, think about all the money that, you know, they
also,
had
you
that...
do notice, Richard, they've already sold an LEC spot for way more than the 10 million buy-in. Now, let me know which Overwatch League team was ever sold with the announced price public and it was way more than the buy-in. I guarantee that'll never happen if I had to guess. I mean, that's pure speculation, but I don't see it ever happening, mate.
Put it this way, the time to sell would be now. Keep in mind as well, by the way, Riot Games are much better than Activision Blizzard. I mean, that's just true in general now. But in the sense they will let you sell. They'll, absolutely. If you want to sell to make more money, that's fine. If we approve of the owner, we will do the sale. Activision Blizzard will not let these motherfuckers sell. They have final veto. They have final say on it. And keep in mind, they get a percentage. I think in the original contract, it was any sale you make, Activision Blizzard pocket 25% off the top.
That's wild.
That was the original agreement. Now, it might have changed, but that was the original one that people bought in for. So if you would imagine what you would have to sell to break even. You couldn't sell an Overwatch League slot for 2 million now. And this would be the time to sell because everyone's got hoping about Overwatch 2. And the reality is, guys, I hate to break it to you, the game is delayed. It was rushed. All my sources behind the scene. Remember, I'm the guy that made them have to come out and basically say it will be released in Q1 with reporting I did. It's going to be garbage, and they are going to start their new season on a broken down, limited version of the game just to make you think it actually exists. It is going to be trash. Overwatch is never, ever going to be the intellectual property Activision Blizzard want it to be. It is an unremitting failure across the board. J-Dubs, what is one realistically feasible move you'd like to see that you haven't heard rumoured or discussed much? So I'll assume this is in CSGO.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, I've said, you can't see it now because of the team, but like prior to this major, had like Navi flopped or whatever. You know, you want to see maybe Simple and Neat go at it. You want to see Carlos get his guy. But I'm trying to think if there really is a move out there that I want to happen that hasn't happened. I mean, just for his sake, maybe Rops. The problem is everyone goes, well, Rops should go to FaZe. It would be a good fit. I don't know anymore. He should replace Olaf Meister. Yeah, I don't know about that FaZe team, guys. I don't know about it. So
I've got one for you. I've got a spicy one for you. Because this is going to come out of left field. Because I'm not just going to take like one that I know can't happen, like Device scored to G2 or something. Because it's too late, and he's obviously in NIP. They've made changes. It doesn't seem like he's leaving. Here's the move I would like to see. Imagine if Alexi B goes from OG and he joins G2, and he's the IGL.
Oh, well, so spoiler. I can tell you, it would be. I think that'd be straight fire. But I interviewed the CEO of OG 2 days ago.
All right. What was he selling you at the time? NFT or something? Was he...
No, mate. Obviously, I've done my work, mate. I grilled him about that shit. So if the fans are interested in that and getting his perspective, and obviously, mate, he even leaked the daughter changes that haven't been announced yet. Because I said, like, it'll be out in, like, 7 days or whatever. So we were talking about the new team, the new daughter team. You know, obviously it's out there now, like, Thompson's standing down to go be with his family. Seb's retired. So anyway, so that'll be out in a few days. But he basically said that like how they think philosophically at OG, because it literally was a player-founded organization, is that basically they believe that it's, you know, they have the players to succeed. It's just you're not doing all the right things and it can click. So Alexi's not going anywhere, and they're not going to be making any roster changes unless he told bare lies to my face and said we will not be thinking about any roster changes. What we are going to do is change our systems. Like I think Rugger, the coach, is going to be a bit more involved. I think he was talking about maybe potentially simplifying some of the playbooks and the strat aspects. Because I think one thing he said was like Alexi might be a bit too technical with some of the players, and that might overcomplicate stuff. So that team is going to be the team that they want to take forward. And also, he did talk a lot about Nico and how they've never had a run with Nico being free of the drama and the bullshit that was hanging over his head.
Yeah, the OG Nico, just for
the OG Nico.
Well, obviously, yes.
So I mean, listen. He's a very good speaker, and you know, I'll wait and see. Healthy skepticism as always, but yeah, that OG lineup sticking together.
That's a fucking joke in itself. It's never going anywhere. They can change anything they want. You can't polish a turd, mate. And by the way, of all the orgs, they've got to be the worst one ever to learn this lesson, because if people don't know, their team literally out of nowhere won 2 TIs. Now, you're all going to go for your noobs at Dota. That's not true. They won majors. That was different lineups, you dickhead. Some of the best players left before they won TI. Like, the first one was an absolute miracle out of nowhere. And the second one even was still pretty nuts. Like, they hadn't like dominated the circuit that year. So like, if people don't know, unfortunately, of all the orgs, they're the ones who might believe like, but if you just keep the same players and you wait and then the right time comes, which I think personally is like, that's fool's gold. The fact he captured lightning in a bottle twice, just leave it at that, mate. You're not going to do it 5 times.
No, I mean, like, as well, you like, I mean, the two guys, because like, a good piece of content, if you're interested in Dota, is back when Seb was fucking mad. He did like a 2-part.
His name, by the way, he wasn't fucking a guy called Mad.
Yeah, no, that was his name was fucking Mad, which he changed obviously. And Duncan did like, I think it's a 2-part. Is it like a Reflections just after they won the first Reflections? Yeah, it's really good. There's
like
some
5.5 hours long or something. That's not a joke. It's literally 5.5 hours long or something.
Yeah, and I've interviewed No Tail in the past, and he's always been a cool guy. And so they're still involved on the managerial side of things, but it will be interesting to see, like when these new players they've got for Dota are announced. By the way, people are going to flip their shit, not only is it going to be we're mourning a great lineup. Well, you know, I don't want to say too much, but
I can guess already. Come on, it's OG, mate. They don't have money.
Well, no, but people are going to go wild. People are going to go over in Dota. I mean, the Dota fans on Reddit are fucking mental anyway at the best of times. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. So keep an eye out for that. Anyway, there's similar question from Fursock. What has been the most surprising move of the post-major roster shuffle so far? It's definitely the Vitality.
Oh, it's got to be the Vitality one. By the way, if people don't know, that literally came out of nowhere. I didn't have a single person that I'm aware of who even knew about that move. Like, as I myself publicized, that package was originally supposed to go to Complexity. That was the team I kept hearing for months and months and months. And then after that, there wasn't even any other customers. Then it was like, does G2 take 1 or 2 of the players, or does a player go to FaZe? There was obviously the now potentially bullshit Dipri to Nip one, everyone remembers. So yeah, the reason that move's crazy is, 1, I heard nothing that Vitality was unhappy with their team, and then 2, there was no intimation that Astralis players could go to Vitality. That move for real was an absolute blockbuster out of left field for everyone, I think.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'll say both orgs did a great job of keeping it under lock and key as well. I mean, that's the type of move that, with so many players involved, 2 orgs, especially one that likes to leak shit, the fact that didn't come out before the major, and by the way, it would have been disastrous.
It's weird, isn't it? Here's the thing, Rich. I don't want to like call back to something earlier in the episode, but this one journalist, I think his name's Nell. I don't know his name or what he looks like, but his alias is Nell, right? Thing with him is he's one of the best journalists in the whole scene. He's hooked into the French scene. But bizarrely, he only puts out the Vitality news sort of when Vitality the org would want the news to go. I can't. I'm trying to put something together, but it just doesn't. Pieces don't fit in it. Yeah.
Crazy. It's crazy.
Don't fit.
So thanks for that.
It's never gonna end, by the way. You're right. If people still haven't learned it, why'd you even start with me? It never ends. I'll keep going for fucking years with this shit.
I know you do.
On TV. It's never gonna end, boys. Never.
It is indeed a terrible path to go down. Echo asks, of all the great CSGO players that have retired now or faded into lower tiers, who do you wish would have won a major the most? That's easy. It's Guardian.
Easy one.
Easy as fuck. Guardian not having a major is a sad travesty, especially when it was meant to be Navi's year, 2016 in Columbus. He did a config and fell over playing football and fucking broke his right elbow and was all fucked up and bandaged for the whole event. Got to the final and then obviously, choked. But yeah, it was that's the saddest, man. Guardian, by the way, was just such a lights out player, and knowing him from Source and seeing how well he did in CSGO, I always wanted it for him. And I know he won, which one was it now? It was one of the big ones. Was it Cologne New York? And he did cry on stage. I think Red Eye was there, wasn't he? He's always there when players are crying. And he said, I finally won a big one. And that memory just doesn't That memory just doesn't.
No, of course not. It's not a major, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So,
by the way, Guardian is the obvious answer for this one. It's not even one where there's a big shortlist because what people don't realize about CSGO history is most of the great players did get a major, even if they weren't good at the end. Like the only other obvious name is maybe Existence. There's one for you. Another super old school player never got one.
Isn't it? That's the one you actually do literally cry about when you're alone, like just thinking about it. You're on some heroic fucking video shit when you think about Existence having a bit. He went to a major.
Yeah.
The waiter said you'll never win one.
Exactly. They got me.
Yeah, they did. Ortarian, which fight would I rather see? Fury versus Usyk or Fury versus AJ? It's got to be Usyk in this one, mate. It's the big unification bout. It would be the fucking. I called Usyk to win his fight as well. He made me money. I had a very good feeling about him. I don't even think that's a question for me. I'd definitely want to see Fury Usyk. I just like watching Tyson Fury, like a lot of people. I mean, heavyweight boxing's been on its fucking knees for a long, long time. In that it hasn't had great fighters and great champions. I mean, if you lived through the Klitschko brothers era where it was, it was just so dull, just bums losing to Klitschko every fucking few months. It was one of the Klitschkos. It was absolute garbage. So it's good to see someone with a bit of character. I mean, Fury literally came out of that fight where, remember, he got fucking knocked down. It was a hairy one. Immediately just starts doing fucking karaoke on the mic. Mad cunt. Like, what a mad cunt. So, yeah. But, yeah, that would be the fight for me. The Bear asks, Richard, now that you are a professor, an adjunct professor, but a professor all the same, are they going to let you teach some Bukowski while you were at it? I don't think that would be appropriate nor welcome.
He's not doing English literature, he's doing fucking esports.
Doing esports, and specifically integrity within esports. But anyway, along that vein, if either of you could teach a class about a novel, which one would it be?
I mean, the obvious one for me is I would just do the Dune series, because I actually do low-key think there's an example of someone who, even though it's only one author wrote it, he did an amazing job of drawing all these strains from history and politics and philosophy. That's an example of a book series where basically what you bring to the series is what you'll get out of it. So there's so much you could tie into current things of politics or social. I feel like that could be like a Rosetta Stone you could do a whole course out of. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, for me, I love. I read a lot of Russian stuff, and obviously, I'm a big Solzhenitsyn guy, and I was talking about it with Semler at the major. Obviously, I lent him the Gulag Archipelago, and that's a great book. But I mean, obviously, pick any of the big ones from Dostoevsky. Crime and Punishment is a fucking mega book. It's so good about what it says, and. Yeah, I'd probably pick something like that. I think I love Crime and Punishment. The novel, not the concepts. So yeah, there you go. Carve. In a copycat industry, it's a Carve question coming up, guys. Right. So strap buckle. Yeah, selling. Carve says, in a copycat industry such as esports, now that Carlos has pulled off another merchandising coup with G2 chokers, which org knockoff are you looking forward to the most? FaZe Clan offering an NFT version available via their latest under-18 crypto skin casino to celebrate the Boston E-League Major Final choke. TSM bringing out a commemorative cravat to remember their stellar 0-6 performance at Worlds 2020, or DreamHack selling ESL-branded neckties, celebrating their first foray into professional wrestling when that innocent Swedish child accidentally wandered into the Hell in a Cell arena in 2015 and got chokeslammed to the ground and to the sound of a grown man weeping. It's good. Listen, I actually will... I'll run with this in a serious fashion. I think the G2 chokers, occasionally you see, this is why G2 is the org, guys.
Level.
They're so far ahead of every other org when it comes to because that's been joked about before. I've seen orgs go, haha, we should sell these. Carlos just goes, make it so. And mate, sold the fuck out instantly, because what a great bit of fucking merchandise. Also, as I've always said, nothing softens the blow of a crushing defeat more than sort of humor. I mean, Amanek was at it today as well, mate. All right, there was one of those rapid gifs, of Monasy in different shirts, saying which team is he gonna go to. Click on the gif and show us your screenshot. And basically, Amanek went and did it in its Monasy in a G2 shirt, and he's gone shit. Because obviously, he's the guy who gets cut. They're all so fucking, mega with that stuff. And Amanek is getting cut. I mean, understand, he is gone. So, yeah, G2 are great, and I can't say enough good things about them. I love what they do. And there it is. That's all the questions. So, time to wrap up the show, kiddies. Obviously, shout out to the sponsors before we go. Check them out. If you want a VPN, go to nordvpn.com/RLS, 74% off. It really is good. Click of a button. Doesn't save any of your data or all of that good stuff. You can go look it up. They've been independently audited. VPNs are an essential component of traversing the internet these days. And obviously, SteelSeries, it's almost Christmas. Be sure to pick yourself up some sick SteelSeries merchandise like this lovely headset I'm wearing or the Prime wireless mouse I'm using. You can go to the SteelSeries and just use my name with no space, Richard Lewis, 10% off anything you choose to buy. And with that said, well, final shout out to all of our patrons, our $100 patrons, Jerky's Minion, Michael, Benakagi, Carv, Cathal, Cred, J-Dubs, Marcus Kiumpar, Tobias Bernasconi, Will the Weed Wrangler, and our $50 patrons, Adam Ox, Alex C, A-Rammer, BP420, Bacon, Bitcoin Cash Podcast, Canapacito, Chronic Alcoholic, CMAC, Dancer Master, Echo, Fursock, Goody Woody, Gern Kaya, John P, J Ray, Judas, Miss Alcoholic, Nolan, Atarian, Rekovic on Steam, Sard Sawar, The Bear, Tim Frost, Lonnie, Watchdog, Zumba, and Zarathenia. That was the Rostermania episode of By the Numbers. We'll see you sometime next week. Until then, take care of yourself.